Somewhere beyond the recesses of time and space, two podcasters are set adrift in a machine, picking up transmissions of movies that are forgotten but not gone.
Welcome everyone to Movie Memory Machine, the only podcast about forgotten films that can traverse dimensions without the help of a drone. I am your host, Landen Solano, and joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Truman Caps. Truman, it's good to see you.
Landon, it's spooky to be seen by you, and, I think we actually do traverse dimensions with a drone if you listen carefully in the background of our episodes, or even the droning that comes out of our mouths. I mean, we have actually more drones than the movie Poltergeist.
I think the droning from our mouths patches up dimensions. People are like, other dimensional beings are like, we don't want to hear that shit. Can we just... someone get some drywall spackle and dimensional spackle and... protect us.
Yes, the people in other dimensions hear our droning coming out of their TV, and they just go over and turn off the TV, and they say, oh, they're gone. Thank God.
Truman,
Landon,
what is keeping you from buying a home?
So capitalism as a concept was invented in the year zero by Satan.
Where's the button?
Okay. It's the thing that is keeping me from buying a home at this point in time. First, that it is completely unaffordable to buy a home. It's not possible. I live in Southern California, and that's just not a thing that non-rich people do. Even with
Can't wait to talk about that on this episode.
Even surfing a tidal wave of inherited white wealth and privilege. Like, I have had a pretty easy and chill life, and even at my level, it's out of reach. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is that even though it would be nice to own a home, I also am not a person who is going to be having a family who does not need a white picket fence, a backyard, a swimming pool, basically I'm not going to have multiple other people to buy drones for who are living in my home. So the things that are associated with suburbia, which are basically affluence and raising a family, are both not present in my life.
Okay, all right. Well, so there's a whole subset of fears that you're missing out on. You're not getting the full breadth of the human experience.
Well, this is true, and it seems as though, for whatever amount of fears and horrors and frights you get in your life as a parent, just being a homeowner, everything I've heard from you, the one homeowning podcaster on here, it sounds like your house is haunted even if it doesn't have a ghost in it. It's just haunted by potentially leaking pipes.
Okay, so today we're talking about the Poltergeist remake from 2015. What? They made a remake of Poltergeist starring Sam Rockwell almost a decade ago? Yes, they did, and we are talking about it today.
You've discovered the concept of our podcast. Thank you very much.
It is a remake, obviously, of the incredibly popular and successful Poltergeist from 1982.
Yes.
I wish I had the exact quote in front of me. If I was a better podcaster and researcher, I would have got it off my bookshelf, because why keep books if you aren't going to reference them? I don't know.
Hell yeah.
I'm asking myself and answering myself, and not satisfied with either side of that equation. Let's just keep moving.
Off to a strong start. I love it.
Stephen King wrote this book-length essay called Danse Macabre, and in it he talks about the Amityville horror. And he identifies in it a new form of horror emerging, which is horror for the homeowner. And the original Poltergeist comes kind of at the tail end of this trend of suburban haunted house movies, which are distinctly different than the British haunted house, haunted castle movies, in terms of what is the fear grounded in. And the American haunted house movie is specifically oh shit, what if someone drilled through the wall accidentally, and now I have to patch up. What if my pipes burst? What if my walls started bleeding? How the cost that would come from that? Would that seep into the wood? Would I have to tear everything out? Is it just a quick patch? Can I clean this? How do you get blood out of carpet? I'm not sure.
The contractors who can fix up the blood-stained walls, they're so booked up because so many people have had bleeding walls this season. It's going to take you months to get them in there. The insurance company's going to haggle with you over paying out for that.
So what's interesting to me about this remake is that not only is it unnecessary, I feel like it would be a little less unnecessary if it came out like even 5 years earlier in 2010.
Yes.
Because there was a different kind of housing crisis happening in 2008, if you pay attention to the news.
Really?
It isn't, identical, but, to the emotional stress that people were feeling, in the 70s, late 70s, through the early 80s. So I wanted to start the episode there because I feel like talking about the American haunted house film is going to be a foundational part of why this film does or doesn't work, and thus why it is not forgotten. It is forgotten.
Yes. I mean,
Sorry to tip my hand so early.
I don't think the debate is the movie forgotten or not. If the machine designed to find forgotten movies is giving it to us, I put faith in the fact. Like, there's a reason Titanic has never come out of this machine.
Should it be sent to modern memory? Let's put it that way.
Yes. That is a better question. I think that I have noticed this too, especially in just watching the first season of American Horror Story, because I'm really just, I got my finger on the pulse of culture. I'm watching the 11. I'm watching the season of American Horror Story that I think predates this movie. The point is,
yes,
so much of that show, I was surprised, is just tied up in the real estate market of LA.
Yeah.
And a big just feature is we sank all this money into buying this house, into buying this asset, and it's haunted as fuck, but we have so much money wrapped up in it we can't leave, even though this house wants to kill us and is horrifying. And like, that is a driver of the drama, is the fact that you have sunk so much money into something. And I think that's also for the same reason that I have a lot of trouble with horror movies. I have a difficult time watching horror movies because I'm too scared of them. I think that's another reason that I'm not making more of a play at homeownership, because it's fucking scary to sink that much of your money into something that might be trying to kill you.
And we're not even talking about homeowners associations yet.
I would be trying to kill the homeowners associations. If I've learned anything in YIMBY activism in circles, it's that those are the true poltergeists.
What's interesting though is, like, when you get these homeowner stories, like, it's a good example of how comedy and horror are so closely associated with each other. Like,
sure,
it's setup payoff, and one of it is to make you laugh, one of it's to make you scream or feel uncomfortable, whatever. So you get something like homeowning and sinking money into homeowning that can go, like, so ludicrous that we have to laugh at it, a la The Burbs or The Money Pit or anything else, I guess, starring Tom Hanks. Did he do anything else but homeowning comedies in the 80s?
He inherits his mom's house in Forrest Gump, I'm pretty sure. I think in Road to Perdition they're renters.
Mermaid in Splash.
Yeah. You see, I can't even afford to buy a mermaid anymore in this economy. It's terrible. Mermaids are going for so much. I can't get a down payment on that.
And then the flip side of that is, like, homeowning is such an absurd, extreme adventure that you have to play it. Like, you couldn't just play a straight, like, mumblecore drama out of buying a house and fixing up a house and living in a house. Like,
no, yeah,
there's no story there. The only story to these is homeowners regret, home buyers regret. I shouldn't have done this, and now I'm reaping the consequences, and it's either hilarious or terrifying.
And there's never a movie about a bunch of people who live in apartments looking at their homeowner friends going to Home Depot all the time and being like, man, that sucks for them. I'm just gonna call the landlord and maybe he'll fix it. At least it's out of my hands.
Now, okay, I was gonna bring this up later in the episode, but maybe it's worth mentioning now. How like there are and as soon as I say it, a thousand examples come to mind that prove me wrong. But on the whole, there are less haunted stories set in apartments than there are houses.
This is true.
And I what do you think the reason for that is?
I mean, I think that on a logistical level, it's harder to be spooktacular when there's loads of other people close by, close enough that in many cases you can hear them having sex. But then I think also, I don't know, it's strange because I feel like living close to other people in an apartment building can really be its own form of horror and torture, especially or even more closely living with
I've got
them.
15 years of evidence of that.
No, but I think really what it is just that you know, when you've got a haunted house, that's your own domain. That's not something that you're sharing with other people. That is your own space. And when it's being invaded by ghosts, ghouls, geists of all varieties, that sets up a better conflict than just, oh, I'm renting this, I have an $800 security deposit down, I can pull up stakes and leave at any time.
There is a certain invasion is a great word for it that is different, and I think that's one of the things that differentiates it from classic UK horror, you know, haunted house stories, or Japanese, where films about hauntings from Japan are more familial and about connecting with, you know, lost ones or vengeful spirits, you know, that have been done wrong in their waking life. Where there's you're the kind of history buff here between the two of us. There's another kind of specific thing to American haunting films, which is, I think even more than like homeowners regret or homebuyers regret, there's a certain guilt to owning land.
Sure.
That, you know, I think is unique to the American horror film. Like, you might have a haunted castle or something, but there's not like, oh, this haunted castle was built on the remains of the Crusades. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe they just have so many layers of history that death is built upon.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas we invaded a bunch of other people's history and then started building our history on top of it, and yeah,
exactly. And so I was gonna bring up, like, this kind of for me starts with the Homesteaders Act or acts of just like opening up. And I wanted to get your reflections on this, and you think there's any validity to this, where you kind of just, the government goes, okay, this free land, this open land is free for the claiming, even though clearly it wasn't. And then what kind of damage we did, maybe not aware of it in the moment, but, you know, over decades and generations realized, what the fuck did we do to claim this land, and who have we, you know, taken it from? And
yeah, it's that situation of kind of taking a second and looking back and kind of realizing, you know, oh wow, I wasn't even really thinking about what happened here before. I was just so excited to acquire this thing. I mean, it is you know, it is that same kind of homeowners regret, coming into ownership of something without really considering what was there before and how that is affecting it now, and just the implications of that, either in a horror movie on a practical level or in our current reality on a moral level of reckoning with what was done. Like, the places where these houses were built in both this movie and the far superior original are, you know, areas that were once inhabited by people other than the folks who were living there, areas that were taken by force, and then this kind of new paradise for affluent, upwardly mobile people was built here. And both movies, one movie attempts to reckon with that a little bit, and unfortunately it's not the one that we watched for this podcast.
Well, no, but I think that it through the years it gets abstracted to the point where I think there's still a kernel of truth in that, though, of something like today's film, where they kind of whitewash the reasoning from the first film and just say it was built on a cemetery, the cemetery was moved. Just the idea that we are now, you know, this house, this place, the suburb that we've bought into and now live on is occupying space that was once, you know, kind of sacred for another reason. and now we've repurposed it for crasser use.
That's.
I think there's still some, like, even if it's not addressing it head on, like, that's still there. That guilt is still playing on the same sorts of things.
And that is very true. And I think that the strength of just the Poltergeist movies is they do kind of center on this idea that the suburbs are built on violence. You know, there's this bucolic place where your kids are having fun and it's a good school district, but there is displacement of Native Americans, there's displacement of, you know, black and brown people to have that place, there's exclusion. And I think that both movies try to tackle that. Just, I guess one of them completely tackles it, and the other one, it just sort of slips through its fingers. And sadly, that is the movie we're talking about today.
Yeah, okay, so today the machine has made us watch Poltergeist from 2015.
Yep.
Truman, do you want to give a quick synopsis of this, and then we can talk a little bit about comparisons to the original?
Landon, I think we'll talk a lot about comparisons to the original, if my thoughts are any prediction. Newly laid-off father Eric Bowen, played by Sam Rockwell, and his aspiring author wife Amy, played by Rosemarie DeWitt, move into a house in suburban Illinois with their 3 children, 16-year-old Kendra, played by Saxon Sharbino, 10-year-old Griffin, played by Kyle Catlett, and 6-year-old Madison, played by Kennedy Clements. As they get settled in their new home, Madison begins communicating with an otherworldly presence through the television, which messes with the lights and electronics to frighten and torment Griffin. While their parents are away at a dinner party during a rainstorm, Griffin is attacked by clown dolls in an old tree outside the house, Kendra is nearly pulled into a pool of tar in the garage, and Madison is lured through a portal in her closet. With their daughter missing and seemingly trapped between our world and the afterlife, the Bowens seek help from a team of parapsychologists and TV ghost hunter Carrigan Burke, played by Jared Harris, to bring their daughter back to the land of the living.
Poltergeist, I don't know why your synopsis of it made me. It was so kind of brought the absurdity to the changes this film makes. Certain scenes come to mind.
It brings, you know, it highlights the absurdity of the changes that this movie made from the original, and it also highlights the absurdity of the similarity. Like,
yeah. Well, okay, let's get some specs on this for further context. It was released on May 22nd, 2015. Do you have how many theaters it was released to?
Do I have a guess? I don't know.
Do you want to guess? I mean, I didn't know if you had the number. I didn't want to presume.
I didn't have the number in front of me, so I will guess. I'm gonna say, I don't know. Is this a 2,500 theater movie?
This is 3,240 theaters. That's
wow.
I think they built theaters to put this in.
and what kind of ground did they build theaters on? Did they move cemeteries to build theaters to show Poltergeist remake 2015?
It debuted at number 4.
What is it with 4? We keep getting movies that debut at 4 and stay at 4.
We're finding. Well, no, I got a twist for you this week. It dropped
Spooky.
to number 7 in its second week.
Ooh.
Now, that's different than usual. Usually it stays at the same number. However, most of what we've covered so far have stayed at the same number and then dropped off in its third week. This goes from number 4 to number 7 in its second week to number 10 in its third week. So it has 3 top 10 weeks in a row.
But the whole time it is getting slowly sucked into a pit of tar, going deeper and deeper and
Yes.
lower into the ground.
Yes. And then getting spewed back up into someone's garage. It stayed in theaters for about 11 weeks. Here's what it was up against.
Yeah.
Number 1, the weekend of May 22nd. Also new that weekend, Tomorrowland, starring George Clooney. If you're going, huh? What? Wait till the machine spits that one out at us.
I suspect more people remember Tomorrowland. That one I think has more juice. This is my book, but also I lived in a house full of Disneyland obsessives at the time.
Well, okay.
Very haunted house.
Yeah, that's going to be curious to track of, like, because one thing we didn't talk about with horror films is, like, it's hard to find a forgotten horror film because the horror film community just doesn't let anything slip through their fingers. They eat up every morsel of everything.
Saying they as though they is not we in your case.
Well, I don't know. I place myself a little bit on the outskirts of the community because I have some very distinctive differences and different opinions than most, including my opinion about the original Poltergeist.
Oh, okay. I mean, listen, I've always assumed that you own a condo squarely in the middle of the horror community. You are close to cafes and bars and a subway station. You are in downtown horror community. It's like... You talk about Leprechaun 4 too much to not be living in that zip code.
It's like people who eat pizza. Like, it crosses borders and boundaries, and I'm constantly on the outside just kind of like going... All right, I like this pizza a lot. You also like it, but you like it for kind of weird reasons.
Oh, I see. Okay. I guess that's true. I mean, yes, I suppose I do play video games like 40 hours a week, but I would, be sick if I called myself a gamer. So I guess it makes sense.
I've got my nose firmly up in the air about horror films, just about completely different reasons than most of the horror community does.
Oh, okay. So you have a house on the outskirts of the horror community, but you have a big telescope that you look through to spy on it and scribble in your notebook your thoughts about what you see. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, listen, whatever neighborhood I'm residing in, I'm always going to be the person yelling at people on my lawn. So that is true in the horror community as well.
Boy, that's great. I sure hope a ghost never gives you some kind of ironic comeuppance.
Okay, getting back to what this was up against. So number 1 was Tomorrowland, which came out this same day. So both of these movies are released May 22nd.
Yeah.
Number 2 in the box office was Pitch Perfect 2 in its second week.
Okay.
Number 3 in the box office was Mad Max Fury Road in its third week.
I mean, that was sucking up a lot of attention at that point.
Yeah. And there's another big attention one in its fourth week, coming in just under Poltergeist, Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Oh, yes. I seem to remember those Avengers. They went on some adventures, didn't they, back in the day?
A handful. This had a reported $35 million budget. Of course, as always, that does not include marketing. This is a production budget. Who knows how much they throw into marketing for these things? I'm sure it's disgusting.
Yes. All the money they spend on those wonderful press kit packages where Sam Rockwell is being interviewed about the squirrel scene in this movie, seeming very interested and eager to talk about his time on the set of Poltergeist.
Oh my God. Sam Rockwell doesn't remember this movie.
No, I forgot Sam Rockwell was in this movie during this movie because he kind of stops being in it.
Here's the surprising thing. Box office-wise, it makes just under $45.5 million domestically and just under $48 million internationally. That's slightly upwards of $95.5 million. That's, doesn't quite... In 2015, we were still like $100 million is the benchmark, but it's pretty dang close.
So some people almost made money off of this.
People almost made money off this.
I mean, obviously the crew and the cast, like, they got paid, sure, but like the people who decided that this movie would make money, they almost were right.
They were almost right. Now, but here's the thing. I think maybe their assumptions were a little... Maybe their aspirations were a bit higher, because I crunched some numbers here that I thought were kind of interesting.
Okay.
Now, this is where we have to start talking about the original. The original movie is an Amblin film. It was, I don't know how far into his slate it was, but within the first 5 years of Steven Spielberg producing movies under his studio of Amblin.
It was made when he was making E.T., so...
Yes. I mean, so he's had the success of, obviously, Jaws, which I don't think was Amblin, but Close Encounters definitely was.
Yeah.
He had the flop of 1941. So, like, it's interesting that in that movie, he gets a budget of $10.7 million. Compared to this movie's $35 million. Now, I did some numbers.
Inflation?
I got inflation.
Hell yeah, you did.
$10.7 million, even at that time, equates to $27 million in 2015 money.
Wow, so, babe, we love adjusting things for inflation. It always puts conversations into new context. So he did so much more with less.
Well, he didn't. Well, okay.
Okay, well, the whole
Okay, you're
Toby
gonna hold me
Hooper,
back, hold me
Steven
back.
Spielberg thing. No. I read all about that. It's disputed. Oh, did Steven Spielberg really make it, or did Toby Hooper make the movie? I
Oh, boy.
personally,
I got spicy opinions.
I don't super care, and also
I don't either.
Everyone. Okay, well then let's stop talking about it. What else do you have to say?
That was going to be my whole rant.
Okay, great.
This is something that puts me on the outside of horror fans, where it's just like, Steven Spielberg has a strong vision. He's the producer. He's providing the money. He wrote the script. He's hiring someone who he enjoys his talent.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why do we have to debate over who did what? This is why I hate the auteur theory.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Here's the thing. On that, so on a $10.7 million budget, inflated to $27 million,
Yeah.
it originally grossed $121.7 million.
Yes.
Which would be $330 million compared to 95.5. So,
Yeah.
like, the return on investment on the original is, now that's math I can't do. I don't percent increases. I don't get. I don't know how to go. That's 3,000% more.
Write in, anybody with a calculator app who knows how to do it, write in, let us know what that number is. We'll read it on air in the next episode. It'll be great content. I think that this seems like a case of, there was something going around in the early 80s where a, kind of horror movie with some comedy elements gets really big, and then Hollywood has spent the intervening 40 years since desperately trying to make that work again. Like Poltergeist and Ghostbusters, they keep being like, this worked in the early 80s, why is it not working again? It's so close, we're just gonna keep throwing money at it. That was
interesting. You bring up Ghostbusters because there's a lot of
Yes.
connections we have to make to that.
a spooky number, one might say.
Here's one thing I just want to throw out right out the gate, which an interesting connection is Steven Spielberg has nothing to do with this remake, except that he wrote the original, so I think not even in the film, but just on like IMDb, he's credited with like story and characters by. He did not produce this movie. He did not write this movie. It's not based on his script. It's kind of based on the concept. I have a question about that later.
The concept of this movie is, what if all the stuff that happened in the popular 80s movie Poltergeist happened to a family in the modern day? That's pretty much as close as it gets, conceptually.
No characters, no anything. Yeah. So, but what's interesting to me, the connection is the director, Gil Kenan, he directed Monster House.
Yes.
Which was one of DreamWorks' first animated films, features.
Yeah. And
DreamWorks being part of Amblin and Spielberg's kind of animation division. I don't know if he owns it, but he at least helps spearhead creatively getting that off the ground. I'm not an expert on that. I could use some fact checking, but he's the reason that Monster House kind of got an audience. Robert Zemeckis, who's a big collaborator with Spielberg, was producing it.
Yeah.
Spielberg is like, this movie's fun. It harkens back to the 1980s where you can have a scary family film. So he already has this kind of haunted house Steven Spielberg connection before going into this. I haven't read anything or saw any interviews where there's any connective tissue toward like, oh yeah, they were talking about this and my name just got kind of bandied about for potential director, or if it's complete coincidence that he's directing this.
I saw some interview where the interviewer mentions like, oh, well, you made Monster House, so you have experience with making haunted house films, and thinking kind of like, well, I don't know, it seems like he has a background in horror movies. I don't know that just by virtue of having made another movie with a house in it makes you suddenly the perfect person to direct Poltergeist, because I don't know, houses seem like a fairly common plot element.
Well, I mean, he got Monster House based on a short film he did called The Lark, which is this kind of experimental, somewhat avant-garde horror comedy about a haunted-ish kind of house. So, I mean, I don't think it's too far out of the realm to go, can we shortlist some directors who have experience in, bringing this sort of thing to life?
Yeah. Well, so can we crack open the original Poltergeist? Because I mean, am I jumping the gun on you by doing this?
No, let's do it, but do it through this lens and talking about this film, which is like, where was the 2015 remake on your radar when it came out? Had you seen it before? And we'll add to that, what is your relationship with the original?
Okay, well, easy answer to both. This movie was not on my radar at all. I had no idea that they made a remake of Poltergeist with Sam Rockwell in it until The Machine told us that they did. But the thing is, my relationship with the original Poltergeist started like less than a week ago when I watched it for the first time.
Wow. Okay. I mean, no judgment. We all know you're not a horror fan, which is
everyone knows this.
A fan of horror films, which is totally fine and reasonable.
I'm nowhere near that community. I take a detour on the freeway to avoid that community on my way to whatever other community. I'm not really a horror buff. I've known that the movie was good, and then when I knew we were watching this, I thought like, well, fuck it. I know this remake is not going to be great. I want to watch the first. I want to watch the first movie first, so I don't get any of it tainted. So I think the original Poltergeist totally rules. I think it's amazing and great. I think it's super, super cool. When I was watching it, I was just pumping my fists and saying, hell yeah. The effects are really cool and fun. The movie is just... It is just set up so well in terms of how this family is kind of presented to us, how it's shot, their life together. It's a movie that just kind of lets you marinate in... Get to know these people. There's just a bunch of scenes early on that don't really mean anything bigger in the plot. It's just like, let's watch...
The first third of it is that, yeah.
Exactly. It's just a big slice of life. It's like, let's watch all the dads watching football, but, the wires are crossed, so it keeps changing to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. You know, let's watch mom and dad smoking a joint in their room while dad reads a book about Reagan. Like,
that's what got you.
I mean, listen, I have so much to say about the mom and dad smoking a joint scene. That's going to come up again and again in this discussion. But like, the fact that the movie just kind of creates a really, just this vibe of like, here's this family, let's just start poking them with supernatural shit and watch how they respond and kind of just let the plot flow outward from that. I found it captivating and delightful and certainly creepy, but not scary. Like, I was not cowering behind my seat.
Yeah, it's spectacle. I mean, I think it was designed to be such. I mean, there are some intense moments in that, especially if you had seen it as a kid.
I'm sure.
Bathroom scene is
terrible.
Really intense.
Yeah.
To relate it to today's film, like,
it's a remake.
It's hard when you have a remake not to look for proxies to original memorable sequences.
Sure.
And, you have to have a skilled hand to go, okay, I acknowledge the original, we're doing something different, you're either on board or you're not, and it's going to be successful or it isn't. And so today's film kind of often feels like we acknowledge the original and we're going to kind of do something on our own, but it's going to kind of nod to the original. And are you on board?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it feels like the remake is just sort of a remix of a bunch of well-known sequences and scenes and moments and lines from the original, but all of them perfectly and precisely rearranged and remastered to be just so much worse than the original. Just to deprive them of their dramatic power and of their weight and to kind of deflate tension and meaning from moments that hit so well in the original movie. Yep. It's like reminding you of it in the thing you really liked and then doing it just notably worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I would describe it maybe I'm not accusing you here, but I would describe it in maybe a little less critical way. And I'll go in, maybe I'll explain by going into my answer to where it was on my radar, which is I had seen this before. I believe I've mentioned this on the show before that this is probably a pizza movie. But one that I was like excited for, one that I knew I was going to watch eat the entire pizza and then just writhe on the couch in pain, watching the rest of it.
Yeah, pain induced by the pizza or the movie, who can say?
I didn't see it when it first came out. I didn't see it in the theater. And here's kind of the twist. I'm ambivalent about the original. And so I didn't really have like an opinion on the remake going into it. Very early on into this whole like conversation about remakes, I've always just been like, who fucking cares? Either it's going to be good or it's not, and it's going to live and die by its quality. Who cares if it's being remade or not?
Yeah, sure, of course.
That's just kind of the thought that I've held for a while. That said, it did kind of look like a pointless exercise. So even though I am a horror nut, I didn't see it in the theater, but I did eventually see it, probably on streaming. I couldn't tell you what service, but and did it while eating a pizza. So not to try to leverage extra credit points from our listeners, but
what? Because you've seen the movie before, like you want extra credit for that?
No, to prep for today's episode, I watched this movie 4 times. Now, hold on.
That's par for the course, though. How many times do you watch Barnyard?
I got the DVD for $3, and it has both the theatrical and extended cut. Now, this is not a 54 situation where the extended cut has 7 extra minutes, and I watched that before I watched the theatrical. I can't tell you what was cut out. I have no idea what was cut out.
Was there like a new kind of gay subtext to a lot of the ghosts
would be into
that Harvey Weinstein just didn't want in Poltergeist?
And I ended up watching the theatrical cut 3 times and the extended cut once for today's episode. But I also went back and watched the original trilogy. So I'm steeped, and oh god, I forgot about this. I also read the novelization of the first Poltergeist book.
Okay. And then you also went and built a house on the remains of a cemetery and raised 3 children in it. Like, Landon is more prepared to talk about this than anyone ever has been.
I just recognize that we're not going to hit many horror films on this show, so when we do, I want to go hard.
But you live at the edge of the community and not in the middle of the downtown horror community. Folks, I don't know. I don't know where Landon lives.
As far as the original goes, it holds a special place in that I saw it on TV a lot before I was into horror, and there are some indelible, images in it that have stuck with me, and I think the curiosity from that is partly why I started to get into horror. So I have something to, thank Poltergeist for. I seem to remember watching it, like it was always playing on HBO or Showtime or some channel before I went to school. And I just remember toward the end of the movie when JoBeth Williams is being, she's in that
the room is
Nolan
tilting.
Room.
She's
on the
up
ceiling.
The wall. Yeah.
I remember seeing that before school and just kind of being put in a weird place for multiple reasons for the rest of the day. But then I watched it, again when I was a little bit older, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. This is fun. This is fine. And then I watched it again, and I'm like, and maybe I had an adverse reaction to the unabashed love for that movie. I'm like, yeah, there's still some things you could be critical about. And so I kind of maybe took too much of a counter reaction to it. Watching it this last time, I got more on board with it, and I just really appreciated the human drama of it.
Yes.
That you can really, the characters feel real, and maybe it is watching it in contrast to today's film. The characters feel real, their situations feel real. There's something that JoBeth Williams and Craig T. Nelson kind of bring to the marriage that is just rich and textured.
Yes.
And I want to point out, I'm going to say this now, even though it's a big note for my notes. The cast of this film is an all-star cast. I am just like, if you took this cast and put it into like an indie film, you're talking about royalty here. If
well,
David Gordon Green was
Yeah.
directing, a 1990s, suburban psycho thriller, you couldn't get better than this cast.
Yeah. For
So
the
I'm not
remake
putting it
specifically is what you mean. Like Sam Rockwell and Rosemarie
Yeah.
DeWitt. Yeah.
And Jane Addams and Jared Harris.
Sure,
They're
yeah.
all like, and we'll go into it when we go into their context. They're all like rich histories in independent and the theater scene. So I'm not laying it at the feet of them. This
Yeah.
movie, really fails on a foundational level.
Yes. And everything that I'm saying about this movie being worse in every way, etc., than the original, like, I want to make clear, this is not due to incompetent writing. This script is written by David Lindsay-Abaire, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner for theater. He wrote a play called Rabbit Hole, and he's won a bunch of Tony Awards. He's clearly a good writer. He has written a lot of good stuff on stage, and he also seems to make a pretty good living writing blockbuster movies of somewhat more dubious quality, such as the Ghostbusters Afterlife and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I guess that's what it's called. Like,
Yeah.
This movie is not bad due to the incompetence of the writer. It's just the way that this got put together and what was asked for, the demands of the production, the demands of the marketing or whatever, and the way that this story was cut apart and reassembled, it just fundamentally doesn't work.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And let's use that to get into talking about this film.
Yes.
Because this movie, I think, starts by really trying to say, this isn't your daddy's Poltergeist. And how do we know that?
Yeah.
It starts, well, first of all, the MGM and Ghost House logo, which is Sam Raimi's production company, they're the ones handling this. They're glitching out, man.
What?
Oh my God.
What?
What's happening? The
What?
MGM lion is supposed to roar, and it's going, like Neo is stuck in the Matrix.
Oh, man. Oh, what if technology could go wrong? What?
Well, how it goes wrong is part of my problem with this movie.
Yeah.
But then it starts on a like pixelated screen, and we slowly pull out, and as we pull out, we see a zombie's face, but it's clearly a computer game
CGI
rendered zombie face, and we keep pulling out, and
era Resident Evil 4 bullshit.
we keep pulling out, and we see that it's a kid playing a zombie game on an iPad in the back of a car, and oh, hey, guess what? We just entered 2015.
Yeah, that's right. We do things a little differently around this kind of poltergeist. And these early moments of the movie where it's us with the family in the car, it's kind of one take. We pull out of the youngest son, Griffin's iPad, and we're, panning around the car. There's Sam Rockwell and Rosemarie DeWitt are driving, and there's all this kind of just like family banter back and forth, and like, the sister says bitch or something, and then the little sister keeps repeating bitch.
Dumbass.
Dumbass, yeah. And it has kind of a looseness to it, and that is clearly inspired by and trying to evoke the kind of loose familial atmosphere of the original Poltergeist. And in this moment, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is gonna work. They seem to understand the vibe of the original movie, and they're trying to recreate it in the present. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm interested. But of course, it's vastly easier to start a movie like writing the first scene in a movie is the greatest thing in the world, and writing any scene after that is so incredibly difficult, because then you got to build on that, and it's not easy to do. And I think it falls apart pretty quickly afterwards. But at least in the first moments, I'm thinking like, okay, they're trying to, like, they're cognizant of what made the original great wasn't just ooh the spooky tree, ooh the spooky clown, but the way the family interacts with each other.
Yeah. Okay, so where to start with this? Because I think it's important to say it at the top of the episode, and by the top of the episode, I mean 50 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, that's very early for us.
It is. And maybe we don't have to talk about it more than just this little disclaimer about child actors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not out to criticize any child actor.
No.
I am curious though, what the difference between directing children in the 80s, 70s and 80s versus now is. Maybe it's not even in the directing, but just what is the difference between capturing a performance of a child in the 80s versus now, where this is, I think, for the most part, a good version of it, but there's still like an artifice to it that doesn't seem to exist as much in the 80s. Like, those kids felt like kids. These kids feel like good actors playing kids.
Yeah, no, totally. I think what it is just that the industry for cultivating and producing child actors has become more efficient and more streamlined, and you have, I think, a lot of, if a young kid is showing an interest in being an actor professionally and they are in the right environment for it, there are classes, there are magnet schools, performing arts things, there are programs, there's probably a culture of parents being willing to show their kids, like, okay, you want to be an actor, let's watch In the Bedroom or something like that. I don't know, let's I'm sorry, I actually haven't seen that movie, so I don't know if there's some huge awful sex scene in it. It was just like the first artsy.
What? Of all the movies in the world you could have picked from In the Bedroom.
Because I don't know. That's the one by the tar guy, right?
the one.
It's a Todd Field movie.
The one time we were all like, Nick Stahl, are we gonna make him a star or not? Before, no, put him in some yellow makeup and throw him in Sin City.
You know what? We need to see his junk get ripped off by Bruce Willis. That's what's really going to put him on track for stardom. But do not let your aspiring child actors watch Sin City. All I'm saying is, the kids in Poltergeist in 1982 were primarily coming from auditioning for, McDonald's commercials or something, and coming from watching Howdy Doody on not Howdy Doody. I don't know, whatever kids show was on back then. I don't fucking care. I was born in the late 80s. And I think that child actors just today are like, there is an environment of... They are exposed to more capital A acting, and I think that just some of that comes through in their performance, where I think there was just something more genuine back then. Not to take anything away from child actors working today, or the child actors in this movie who I think are good.
Yeah, yes. I wonder if there's a certain amount of, like, it's the I wonder if there's a disconnect. Clearly, I have no involvement in this, and, no perspective as a parent, but, like, for all the shit that went down in the 80s, and then it stopped. We never had a problem with child actors again.
Yeah, nope, we started treating them real well after that.
But I wonder if there's a certain disconnect between, the systems in place to protect the child, and I'm not saying this is as a bad thing. This is good that those are in place. But I wonder if those systems create more conversation, which creates more of a performance rather than just like, I don't want any distractions for this kid. Just he's a kid. Throw him in camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, you said it a lot better. I was just playing on it.
Well, hey, we don't need. We're not in the saying it best Olympics here. Actually, I guess podcasting kind of is that.
I've been training my whole life for this.
No, we're all in it for the love of the game, for the love of our own voices. Okay, so I think something that is distinctive about this movie versus the original, and that works against this movie, is that it is considerably shorter. This movie is 93 minutes long, the theatrical release. The original Poltergeist, 114 minutes. For me, gearing up to watch a movie that I suspected I would not enjoy a great amount, seeing that it was only 93 minutes long was kind of a relief. But then you really do feel that missing time in the movie. Everything seems very compressed in the time frame. We don't get all of that time up front to hang out with this family and kind of observe them. The movie tries to front load as much of that as they can, but everything just plays out a lot faster, and because of that, I think that fundamentally compromises what this movie is trying to do. because
that I 100% am on board with you there. And it's a bit of the editing thing. I think it's a bit of economics and writing where you're just trying to, like, as much as like Save the Cat created a language that screenwriters and executives can use to talk to each other, it also created a shitload of problems of like, oh yeah, nothing can breathe anymore. If the characters aren't doing exactly this thing on exactly page 15, then, get back. We're going to hire some other writers if you're not going to do it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's reduced it to a numbers game. And so you lose, it's them. They're looking at buying the house. They buy the house. They're moved in. And there is a scene of like mom and dad in the bedroom, drinking whiskey out of coffee mugs. Instead of smoking a joint together. I have a lot of thoughts about that, which I'll get to in 1 second. But we have scenes like that, but those scenes are mostly taken up with them talking about how Sam Rockwell lost his job, and am I going to coach baseball, or what am I going to do, and we're out of money, how are we going to make this work? All these moments that would just be hang out with the family time in 82, just like, hey, this is funny, this one dad is riding his bike up the street with an armload of beer, and the kids make him crash, and he's carrying all the spilling beer inside, and they're watching the game. Like, slice of life moments that are just kind of fun to watch. We don't have that. Everything here is building up to something, and in a lot of cases, like, that's the dialogue that they've got in all these scenes that is establishing plot. The dialogue is good, but it's not doing what they want it to be doing, because then as the movie goes on, as the hauntings continue, basically Sam Rockwell and his wife, Rosemarie DeWitt, go to a dinner party. All the creepy stuff at the house happens with the kids. The tree attacks Griffin, and Madison gets taken into the closet, and all this stuff. They get back, Madison is missing, they hear a couple creepy things through the TV, and the parents immediately are like, this house is haunted. We can't call the cops about this. We need to go find some paranormal investigators. And then it's just, okay, we're calling in paranormal investigators.
Yeah. I need to hit the slow down button here for a second.
Sure, do it.
But finish your point.
It is laughable that these parents have just come home, found their daughter missing, and their two kids panicking, and they just immediately. It is just taken for granted that they won't talk to the cops. It is just taken for granted that they accept there's a haunting. In the first movie, there are multiple scenes of each parent seeing weird, inexplicable, verifiably strange stuff in the house, so that by the time their daughter goes missing, it's plausible that they'd say, we need to talk to ghost hunters about this. And you don't get that in this movie, and so then the entire logic of it and the whatever kind of lived-in believability of family life you want to have is completely stripped away, and the movie can't stand.
And I think there's one kind of almost throwaway scene, what would seem like a throwaway scene in the first movie. But on retrospect, to your point right now, it becomes essential in understanding why they don't go to the cops. When it's after, okay, this is the original. If you haven't seen the original, sorry, I'm going to spoil the original.
You've had time.
Craig T. Nelson comes home from work. Jo Beth Williams has been noticing the stuff with the chairs in the kitchen. She sets a chair on the ground. It gets pulled across the room. And he's like, okay, so what's the trick? She slowly brings him to realize that something weird is going on here.
Yeah, there's something strange in their neighborhood, yes.
And who are they going to call? They go to their neighbor's house, and they're like, hey, they try to ask him, has anything weird been going on at your house? And they can't keep a straight face. They're just like, we can't quite believe what's happening in our own house, and we can hear how crazy we sound trying to ask you if anything weird's been going on in your house. And with that, it's like a 25-second scene. And once you get back into the house with them, you're like, okay, I understand why they're trepidatious to mention this to anybody. Yeah. That doesn't exist in this version.
They don't seem to have friends aside from a dinner party they go to once. We don't see neighbors. They don't talk to anyone else.
Questions about that. So okay, you've hit on like 16 different things that I need to go into a lot of depth on.
Nice. That's the Truman Caps classic right there.
The first is, like, since you've mentioned it so much already, I'll kind of reverse order my notes here, which is when the first Poltergeist opens. Listen, and we should be taking this film on its own, what it's presenting as well. But
when you remake a very famous, well-regarded movie, you naturally invite the comparison. I mean, I don't think we're being unfair.
No, but it's like, instead of just comparing it, let's look at what it's doing differently and then try to take it on its own, by its own volition. So
I'm prepared. I got notes on that
me too,
buddy. I got so many notes.
The first film, and I know I was pointing the finger at myself because of what I'm about to go into. The first film takes, like, over its credit sequence. You had mentioned there's just around the suburb. You see the remote control cars, a guy bringing beer home on a bike. You get a sense of the neighborhood, the vibe, the place. This is the 1980s Norman Rockwell family.
Yeah.
This is Reagan's America coming to fruition.
It's shot in Simi Valley, where the Reagan Library is.
He's reading Reagan's biography on the bed while he's smoking pot. What?
which is, listen, I respect that. I want to read that as him being like, I'm gonna know my enemy. Reagan would hate that I'm doing this right now.
Versus this today's film, the 2015 film, the remake film.
Yeah, they get it, dude.
No one else occupies this space. They are isolated.
Yes.
They live in a suburb, yet you don't see a single neighbor, to the point where at the end of the film, when the house ostensibly blows up,
yes,
no one is leaving their house.
Yeah,
to go. What the fuck is going on out here?
It's empty. Like, there's a police car and a fire truck pull up, and there's emergency services, but like no other neighbors at all.
There's a moment. Okay, the very pivotal scene, and this is where I think breakneck editing for mainstream audiences who don't care enough, like, they just want to get their money's worth. Like, this isn't a criticism of audiences. It's just like, when you're a movie going, on Friday night to a date night, you just want your $15 worth. You're not going there to, analyze and criticize and look for flubs and stuff like that. You're assuming you're going to get a show.
Yeah, unless you want your date to go very poorly, which is
which I spent 20 years of my life doing.
A lot of girls told me they liked me more as a friend after hearing my unfavorable reviews of a Mission Impossible movie.
There's the centerpiece, or the like halfway point of this film, when they start to go, oh shit, something's going on. There's this huge sequence between all three kids when they're left at home alone. Kendra is watching them, and it ends with the iconic tree that's in both films basically sucking Griffin out the window, holding him by his ankle over the front lawn.
Yeah.
And Sam Rockwell and Rosemarie DeWitt come home and see their child being hurled around like a sack of potatoes by a tree.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we got a problem. Like, I was watching it, I'm like, how is this going to end up with him in his bed waking up and no one believing him?
Yeah.
No, they come home and see the tree like it's a fucking Disney, villain from the early 1930s days.
Like Wizard of Oz
being alive.
Trees throwing apples at you or something.
Yeah. And not a single neighbor is going, why is there a fucking animated tree in their yard?
Yes. And there could be, look, taking this movie on its own merits and not trying to compare it, there's something to be said for, we are in a tough time financially. The real estate market is goofy right now. We bought a house in a foreclosed on neighborhood where we're surrounded by empty homes and there's no one else around. That is a cool and really scary concept. But the movie, the real estate agent says something about foreclosures up front, but other than that, they never try to do anything with this very rich concept.
Do you think that was them trying to explain why there's no activity around?
I mean, she says something like, I think that's both trying to explain why the neighborhood's kind of empty and also why they're able to get a competitive price on this house when money is tight. But
I
also,
gotta earmark that. I got so many questions about that.
But they don't. But like, they don't revisit that again. They don't.
No,
like that
not
would
at
be a kick-ass
I'm
theme.
realizing it right this second as you're saying it. Like, that is probably why there's no reaction from any other neighbor in this movie. Is like, this is a foreclosed neighborhood, not necessarily just the next door neighbor.
And that's what and again, that's a way that I think that doing a contemporary remake of Poltergeist could be really cool and really incisive, because the first one is such a portrait of, you know, the ascendant suburbs and American affluence, and then this one can like take all the same stuff but have it be about, oh, the suburbs are falling apart, everybody's fucking broken in debt, what are like, and it's not about, you know, it's not about perfect suburban life, it's about horrible suburban life that then gets even worse, what with the poltergeists. But it doesn't do that. It introduces the idea, and maybe the writer had that in there, and the studio said, I don't know. But
yeah, no one wants to be reminded. They're there to eat popcorn. We're there to sell popcorn and, you know, get some kissies. Yeah. So you know, no one wants to be reminded that they can't afford their their property taxes.
You can't get any kissies when you're thinking about the mortgage payments that you're underwater on.
Okay, I want to come back to this. I have more notes I need to go into, but I need to take a quick tangent just to talk about the tree.
Great. Okay, talk about the tree. The Lorax over here.
Are trees scary?
I
mean, it's a trope, right? Like the tree branch looking like a claw on the window while you're trying to sleep as a child.
Trees, plural, are scary. I don't think tree
like
is scary. If I see the forest for the trees. Wait, I actually don't know what that fully means. A large number of trees in the dark, that is scary. A single tree, I could take a tree.
I have a tree. I have a poltergeist tree right outside my window.
Does it bloom poltergeists every spring? Do they smell bad like that one tree with the white blossoms that smells a certain way that we all know of?
You know what? I was traveling for work the other day and drove through a city that smelled like a belch.
Oh.
Like I live in a farm state. Like,
and there's a lot of beer being drunk in Wisconsin. It's not out of the question that everyone in a town could burp all at the same time.
It was, you know, you drive past like roadkill or a skunk or you know, a farm that smells like manure. I've never driven through a city that just smelled like, oh, someone at the table next to me burped
and blew it towards you.
Yeah, it was so gross.
I'm torn between not wanting you to say the name of this town on the air to preserve the dignity of the residents and wanting you to say it but so we can all avoid it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to. It was, you know, between here and there, so, you know, you figure that out.
Great, okay.
Okay, but I've just always been curious about trees. I've never found them scary. I've never found their branches scary, their shadows scary. Like, nothing about them. It didn't scare me in the first film. It's always been kind of a sticking point for me in trying to relate to, you know, a proxy character being afraid on screen. That's partly why the first film didn't scare me that much.
I think, and I feel like I agree, even as someone who is, you know, spent much of his childhood being very afraid, and much of his adulthood also, and someone who wakes up in the middle of the night thinking he's seeing shadowy things in his room and freaking out about it. I do not find trees or the shadow of a tree scary either, but I feel like a lot of the you know, the genesis of the original Poltergeist seems to be shit that Steven Spielberg and other people around him were scared of as kids, or frightening memories from childhood, or tropes that they were aware of or had personally lived being implemented. So it might just be, I think it might have been as simple as there was a spooky looking tree outside of his house in the 50s.
Okay, so it's like reading any Stephen King novel.
Yes, exactly. Everybody's a writer who has struggled with substance abuse issues at some point.
And is probably racist. Why is there a racist in every single Stephen King novel.
You know, I mean, look, I think in the same way that people feel guilt about the land that they've bought property on and are trying to deal with that, I think Stephen King is dealing with his white guilt in his own way. I mean, you might ask why we often go on so many, tying ourselves up in knots trying to qualify every statements. I think it's because we're all trying to be good people and expressing our guilt in different ways.
All right. Okay, I just had to go down that tangent. I got to get back to some of the stuff you said. This is the big sticking point for me for the whole film that I'm going to keep circling back to is I think a reason why, not just in this film, but in many films, when scares don't work, when tension doesn't work and suspense, is unmotivated camera movement, unmotivated or contrived fear. Like this movie tries to set us up immediately for this house is fucking scary, isn't it, folks? And they're viewing it in the daylight. There's been no historical, like, we should be scared because we, the audience, know that this is a remake of a movie where a house is haunted. As far as these characters go, they're going to a house in what looks like a nice neighborhood, though the characters in the film don't seem to think this is a nice neighborhood.
It's close. It's close to some power lines. We get a lot of shots of the power lines.
Watch out for that. I also have power lines right out.
I get it. I mean, and listen, I don't think anybody should get up on their high horse about. I can see power lines from my house. Yeah, I like having electricity. I prefer it to the alternative.
What do you if you think the electricity is doing something to you? What do you think the Wi-Fi is? I mean, like not that I'm not a proponent for that, but like the power lines is not going to be the thing that she gets hung up on as a character. Like if she's worried about that, she would also be worried about the Wi-Fi in her house. Lord knows how many microplastics there are in the. Well, actually, I guess we never really see them eating anything in this movie, so I don't know because they. No, we do. We see him eating chicken nugget pizza.
Oh yes, chicken nugget pizza. Well, that's loaded with microplastics.
And this is the oldest daughter, by the way. Anyway, so they're looking at the house. They're talking to the realtor. The kids are exploring, and they go to what will end up being Madison's room that has the closet, which is where all this stuff happens. The portal opens up, both in this film and the original. And there's no reason at all given that the kids should be afraid of this house. That we, the audience, should be afraid of this house. But when they go in and they see this closet, like there's a slow push in on the closet and there's a slow push in on Griffin. And he's like, I don't know about that closet. Oh my God. It's the middle of the day. The sun's hitting it a little too intensely for me.
Know what I mean, Vern?
And then, like, because that's not working, I feel like filmmakers then have to resort to tricks like they do in this movie a handful of times where Griffin's like staring at the closet and he gets kind of up in a trance, and then there's just a loud jump scare where Sam Rockwell thrusts his hand into frame and starts shaking the doorknob.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, he wouldn't do that. I mean, like, he put his hand like 2 inches from Griffin's face to grab the closet. I mean, like, he would say something to Griffin, like, "Hey, could you let me? What's in there?" You know, he would say something before the jump scare happens.
He's taking a sneak up on his son. Yeah,
right. And there's another moment when Sam Rockwell like hallucinates shit coming out of his face, and Rosemarie DeWitt, like another jump scare, a hand kind of like comes over his shoulder like a claw, grabbing at his shoulder to turn him around. It's like no human has ever like seen someone, flushing their face out in the water in the kitchen sink and like reached around their shoulder, over the top of their shoulder, and yanked them backwards to get their attention.
I mean, the movie has to keep finding excuses to give you a jump scare, to kind of kick you in the ribs. I mean, to some extent, I would say the much ballyhooed squirrel scene, wherein, on the first night up in his attic bedroom,
that was ballyhooed by one journalist on a junket.
I've just heard a lot of talk about this fucking squirrel because that journalist brought it up in 2 separate interviews at the press junket. So clearly that made a real impression on her.
Did you look at the chyron at the bottom? I mean, it was Squirrel News.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
they had a bias for why they were bringing it up.
I should have realized it was CN Nut. Yes, that makes more sense. But this whole bit where Griffin is in his room and he's hearing all these noises, and then he opens a thing and a squirrel comes running out. Like, we're jump scared by the squirrel, and then there's this business of his dad getting a squirrel trap, but it's like the squirrel isn't part of the haunting. It's not like part of the poltergeist. It's literally just there's a squirrel in the house, and it doesn't serve any greater purpose other than that, like, we were told we needed to have a jump scare on page 28.
This is okay. I differ from you a little bit here, only in that the "oops, it's an animal" scare is almost required when you're dealing with, maybe not like auteur. Ari Aster isn't putting a cat jump scare in his films, but when you're dealing with a PG-13 4-quadrant blockbuster horror film, you got to go with the Ripley needs to find Jonesy jump scare. Which it's the animal jump scare that doesn't quite make sense, but it always usually brings levity. Like, we can laugh now because it was just a squirrel. It wasn't actually a ghost coming for me.
Yeah,
like it's a tried and true thing, and I'm not defending it, but if they are doing it, I've seen it done so much worse than this squirrel scene.
Yeah.
Like, at least Sam Rockwell, reacts to it in a way that's like, there's something to be afraid of, and then he's immediately like, "Oh my God!" and walks out of the room and kind of is joking about it, and they use it to infuse the movie with some necessary energy that was missing.
Look, I will admit, I don't think that Sam Rockwell does a great performance in this movie. I really like Sam Rockwell. I think he's a great actor, huge fan of him. But I think his best moment in the movie is, he has heard his son screaming and run upstairs. His son runs out of the room. He is chasing the squirrel around, and then he kind of like comes out and the whole family is standing there waiting, and he like makes this big show of like screaming and writhing and throwing himself against a couple of walls. And I'm like, is he going to start dancing? Is he going to do his Sam Rockwell dancing? This is what I want to see. But then he does this whole thing about how, it's a squirrel, we'll be fine, I'm okay. That is kind of the most energy that we ever get out of him in this performance, kind of the most character that we see. And I feel like I feel sort of bad for Sam Rockwell in that he didn't have a lot to work with here. So I don't really want to put it on him, but there is just something about the fact that it takes moments like those. It takes this kind of fake out jump scare with an animal to kind of lend any oomph to these characters or this movie. Like, it gives them a little thrust, but then they don't carry on with the momentum. They just kind of like come to a quick stop.
Okay, and let's go into talking about where this falls in Sam Rockwell's career. But I'll preface this by saying there are, on the whole, this is not a good Sam Rockwell performance. It has fun Sam Rockwell moments in it. Like this moment, there's a cute moment where I could tell he was kind of getting along with the kids, and they're going out to the party for the night, and the kids just keep saying, I break my neck. Oh yeah, and he just like is just going, okay, we're getting out the door now, and he keeps breaking their necks, and they're like giggling. It felt like something organic that happened on the set.
He's doing like karate chops he's not actually breaking their neck. He's like pretending to like do kung fu moves on them or something.
Yeah, exactly. But like, we also get one of the most contrived, like, how do you know a man is suffering financial woes in a movie? He can't put a seatbelt on and starts pounding on the steering wheel. And, he gives that about as much as someone from his stature can give it, which is, you can't sell that moment.
Yeah.
But let's talk just real quick about where this falls in Sam Rockwell's career. He's not yet Academy Award-winning Sam Rockwell.
No. But he was making the Academy Award-winning movie that year, I believe, in 2015.
Yeah, I don't know how long it took to make that movie, but quite possibly.
Yeah,
he was on the path to it.
Yes, that movie, by the way, is 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, and the Truman Caps review is "It sucks." Anyway, continue.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, so Sam Rockwell is just a fascinating actor in that he has one of the slowest burn careers in modern memory for me.
Yeah.
Like, he starts out in the late 80s with, like, TV show guest stars on stuff like The Equalizer. That is now has its own, remake with Denzel Washington.
In its third installment.
I remember him, obviously, my first exposure to him, though, I wouldn't have known it at the time. He plays a punk in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, he's all over the place in both forgettable and interesting films. In 1992, he works with Paul Schrader in Light Sleeper. In 1996, he's in Julian Schnabel's Basequate with Jeffrey Wright. Saul Rubinek, who you might know, he had a stint on Frasier. He was the writer in Unforgiven.
Yes.
He directed this movie called Jerry and Tom in 1998, and it's just cast with people that, like, a character actor directing a film is going to only cast other interesting actors, and that movie is just filled with them.
Wall-to-wall performances.
1998 is a big turning point for him. He does 5 films, including Woody Allen's Celebrity, this quirky little indie flick called Safe Men with Paul Giamatti and Steve Zahn. Which
that's a power trio. I want to watch that movie off cast alone.
That was my first exposure to him because I was either on a Paul Giamatti or a Steve Zahn kick, probably Steve Zahn at the time. And so, I sought that one out, and I'm certain that's where I first saw him. So if 98 was a turning point, 99 put him on the map because he does a Midsummer's Night Dream with Clint Eastwood, then a 1-2 punch of playing Wild Bill in The Green Mile, and of course Guy on Galaxy Quest.
Never give up, never surrender. A truly brilliant role.
Then between 1999 and 2015, he continues to do interesting projects. Just a quick run chronologically through some of the hits. 2001, he works with David Mamet in Heist, Jon Favreau's follow-up to Swingers, Made, which is important because then he's cast as the villain in Iron Man 2 that Jon Favreau directed.
A much better his 15 minutes of screen time in Iron Man 2 vastly better than Poltergeist. He is just oozing charisma in every moment of that otherwise pretty bad movie.
2002 is his George Clooney year. He worked with him as an actor on Welcome to Collinwood, and then I think put him in serious consideration in the Academy's mind with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Great movie, great performance.
That, I think is his first, like, high-profile leading film, and that puts him in the crosshairs of some producers who cast him opposite Nicolas Cage in Matchstick Men by Ridley Scott in 2003. Takes on a George W. Bush proxy, although he eventually plays George W. Bush as well.
Yes.
In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. 2007, he puts in an incredible performance in David Gordon Green's Snow Angels, as well as the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Say the whole title every time.
Gotta say the whole thing. Can't abbreviate it.
2008 does Frost Nixon. 2009, Moon, G-Force, Gentlemen Broncos. 2010 is Iron Man 2. 2011 is Cowboys and Aliens. You're seeing some ups and some downs. 2012, Seven Psychopaths, his first collaboration with Michael Madano, which is what would get him his Oscar with 3 Billboards eventually.
Yeah, another movie that I am not super keen on. Go on.
2013 to 15, he does The Way Back, which I think is a movie you and I like, but it's not really remembered. But no real big hits on the radar, so you can kind of see why you are at a point where, okay, I've had all of these things. I don't really have, I don't have the awards yet. I haven't had a massive franchise. I haven't had a huge blockbuster hit. This movie comes across your plate, and you're like, I'm not really passionate about it, but, if it's gonna get me the, table service I need to have, conversations with producers around town, I'll do it.
Okay. So you're not implying that he just made this movie to get noticed and served at a restaurant, right? It's like have you ever waited so long for them to come and take your drink order that you star in the remake of Poltergeist just to get their attention?
Well, I'm not saying that's not the case here.
I mean, look, listen, you pay for the bottomless steak fries at Red Robin. You expect to have those things refilled. Sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures.
So that's where it falls in his career, and he's a seasoned actor.
Oh yeah, much like the fries at Red Robin. Yeah,
and one that I almost commend his passionless performance here, because I'm like, it's not that he's not game for the film. I mean, he does, he services it, but I almost commend him for having better taste. He's like, I know the fucking movie I'm in, man. This is the bare minimum it needs to do what it needs to do.
Every decision he makes in this performance gives me the impression that he knows this is a movie that will only be remembered by two douchebags on a podcast down the line. It's like, I don't need to entertain them. I don't give it. No one is going to remember I was in this. I'm gonna collect my check.
In those junket videos, the one where he's asked about acting alongside the squirrel, he's like, oh, it's almost like he has to remember, there's a squirrel in this.
Yeah,
I acted with a squirrel.
I mean, it reminds me of the junket videos for Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre, which all of which seem to have been shot, for the release, so years after making the movie, and everyone involved has to be coached and reminded on what the movie was about, what happened in it, who their character was. Sam Rockwell just really disappears in this role, and not in the good way where he disappears into the role. It's just that
the Hugh Grant in Operation Ruse de Guerre.
Yes, Academy Award winner for 2023. But over the course of the movie, his character just sort of fades. Late in the movie, or midway through the movie, they bring in the ghost hunters, and then a little after that, the ghost hunters bring in Jared Harris's character, the TV ghost hunter, and at that point, it's pretty much Jared Harris and the little kid Griffin talking to each other, and Sam Rockwell is sort of just in the background. He kind of runs into a couple of rooms, and he holds on tightly to a rope at one point, and he puts a car in reverse. But otherwise, for the second half of the movie, he's not really there. He's not really doing stuff.
He slides down the roof like it's a slide.
That looks
when
fun.
The house partially collapses.
I mean, that does look neat. That does look pretty neat. That's good butt work for an actor.
It's a comparison to the original that I think this is hard to not make, where that's not 100% the case of the first film, but what happens in the first two movies, at least, Craig T. Nelson, it's about the powerlessness.
Yes.
That the archetype of the breadwinning father. Got to make noises to make sure I'm not holding that up as a thing. But
yes, you're okay. You're in the clear. You made the noises.
Okay, good. There's a certain playing on the male anxieties of being helpless in a situation where all you typically want to do is problem solve, and what can you do if the problem that needs solving is beyond what you can do.
Yes.
And what makes the original interesting is he's constantly continuing to try to assert himself.
Yeah.
But he's at the behest of Tangina, of Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes.
Which is such a fun juxtaposition. Whereas this one, and this is where I want to be careful to take this film on its own rights. You don't get Zelda Rubinstein, and it would be a mistake, I think, to try to cast another Zelda Rubinstein.
Yeah, cast a little person to come in and do work.
It would almost feel offensive to do that,
sure,
rather than just take the character in a different direction. But in doing so, you completely lose that juxtaposition. There's a moment when Jared Harris is trying to explain what's going on and what needs to be done, and Sam Rockwell's like, I'm just having a hard time believing all this. And they try to play that dynamic a bit, but it being two kind of males going at it doesn't have the same effect. Yeah.
And I think that there's so much that is kind of seeded at the beginning with Sam Rockwell being, in some ways emasculated. He used to work at John Deere, but he's been laid off recently. He's clearly pretty bitter about it. The family's having these money troubles. Like, there's this whole bit where he's been trying to buy the trap for the squirrel, but multiple cards get declined. And then
hold on. I gotta press pause for just 2 seconds, because you just mentioned the real estate lady and the hardware store lady. The best performances in the movie to me.
Yes.
These two throwaway characters, the hardware store clerk in particular, are just like A-list material. What they're bringing to this, I've never seen just like walk-on actors kill it more than they do.
Yes, the lady at the hardware store is not amused at all that this guy is having multiple cards get declined as he tries to buy a squirrel trap, and so I don't know, I guess my wife must have canceled this one. No, it's not canceled. It's just it's coming back rejected because you haven't paid your bill, actually.
And Sam Rockwell's like trying to joke his way through. He's like, well, third time's a charm. And she's like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't have time for your bullshit. Let's just get through this interaction. I know. I really like that character.
Yes, no, very relatable. What house does she live in? Does she live in the same subdivision? Is she just made peace with all her ghosts? But he, after having this experience, he's in the car, he's mad, he's punching the steering wheel. It's like, I can't provide for my family. And then he goes to, he sees a mall in the rearview mirror, and then he comes home and he's got he's got a new phone for his oldest daughter who is all upset that her phone died. And he's got this remote control drone for his son. Oh boy, a drone is going to be a plot point in a movie. Don't we love how every movie had that for 5 years? And he's got, a nice jewelry for his wife. And she's like, how did you pay for this? And he's like, I robbed a bank. We then never find out how he paid for it, and we don't really...
Credit cards.
But so what? He's got did he open a new card? I don't know. But
the third card worked.
The third, so he just kept going. So it had another $6,000 on it for all that other shit.
Presumably.
I don't know. There's all of this stuff that is set up with okay, so he feels he feels emasculated by the world. He's not able to provide. This is this drama for him. But then that he just sort of disappears as a character, and then the next update we get is just at the end. It's like, oh, okay, he's started coaching baseball at at some high school based off of the bumper sticker we see on his car. I don't know. We just lose them they are trying to cram so much stuff from the original movie into a shorter package that shit is so densely packed in the second half of this movie that you lose entire characters, you lose their whole arc.
Yeah, I mean, I can't refute that. And, there are some similarities to Operation Fortune, not in that there's exposition dumps, but there are important things that I think we need to see that are just given throwaway lines. And
yes.
I think a lot of it comes actually at Rosemarie DeWitt's character, who is trying to write a book, has written a book. She's a writer. She's not a writer. Has she written something before this?
Yeah.
Has she not? There's a big, discussion that Sam Rockwell is going to be the one that goes out to get the job because this is the time for her to write her book.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, as being a writer, I understand, or both of us being writers, we understand, there's never a good time to sit down and write. That's just a fallacy. You're never going to get that.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a job and she doesn't have a job and you're buying a new house, I think it's maybe time to not sit down and write a book.
Yeah, exactly. Because also, even people who have written multiple books that have sold well will tell you it's not exactly a money-making endeavor, writing a book. You're never going to really do well off of that.
But then there's, allusions to her having been a teacher or a college student or a research person, because that's how she knows about the paranormal researchers. She used to work or be in the university, and says a throwaway line of oh, when I used to be here, this department used to be so and so, or was always thought of a little weird. I don't know what she says exactly, but it's a throwaway line that alludes to the history as opposed to showing us the history between these characters and making us understand the point of view they're coming from.
Do we want to talk about the researchers while we're at this point?
No, not yet.
No,
I do 100%
Shut down.
want to talk about them.
Okay.
Sorry, my version of improv is no, I don't.
Hey, look, you know what? This is we're not upright citizens, but
no,
we're like fourth or fifth city at this point.
What I want to talk about before the researchers, and I think this is important, is to talk about the ghosts. Talk about the haunting, talk about the activity,
Sure.
so that once we get into the conversation about the researchers, we have a little more sense of what they're up against. We've been talking a lot about the family, but not what they're experiencing and how it comes about.
Sure. We got some
I have
lights.
so many comments and questions about the poltergeist activity in this movie.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's the polter. I mean, listen, in the original movie, the poltergeist is never really personified either. But here, it is
in the second film.
Here it seems there's not any one avatar for it. The poltergeistiness is mainly represented by lights flickering, electronic devices going off, hands pressing the inside of a TV on static.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand. It even the ghosts don't really have a point of view. Like, let me just start asking some questions and get your reaction, your answers to this. All right?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Ghosts travel through electricity?
Yeah, I guess they do. I guess so. The
Do the
Amish
ghosts-
have no ghosts.
Do the ghosts live in the ground?
Well, the bodies are in the ground. It seems
So
like.
are the bodies infused with the ghosts? Why can Madison, when they're first seeing the place, find a twig, put the twig upright on the ground and push it into the ground, and then watch it be pushed back out of the ground toward her like it's a sprinkler?
Well, yeah, that I don't.
What makes that happen?
What makes that happen? I can't. You ask me these questions like I'm one of the paranormal researchers and I'd know. Like, I'm not Jared Harris right now. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think it's like a ghost. I don't think it's like a dead body with its finger like reaching out of a coffin and physically pushing the twig back up. If that's what you're asking, it's most likely magic. It's probably ghosty, ghouly magic. I mean, it would be much funnier. And then one time the finger actually comes out, and then she's playing with a skeleton finger.
It's got a little smiley face drawn on it with a Sharpie.
Exactly. It's fun. It's a lighthearted comedy, like Ghostbusters.
This is where it gets a little confusing for me, where there's like, it's just shit happening as opposed to anything having intent.
Sure.
Where, like, Rosemarie DeWitt, I found this trivia kind of interesting. Rosemarie DeWitt apparently agreed to do this film because her husband who was Ron Livingston,
Nice.
had just been in The Conjuring. And The Conjuring was hugely successul.
Yeah.
And in a rare moment in this episode, not comparing it to the original, but comparing it to The Conjuring, what the first Conjuring film does so well is, like, it starts small, and the activity that happens in that has a through line. Like, it ramps up in activity. There's a slow possession of one of the characters, and there's like a definite want, or like the ghost is compelling the children in the film. This, the ghost is a prankster in that, like, it wants to play with the kid, but it also wants to consume the kid and have the kid be a guide. Which kid? Why is Griffin more terrified of it than Maddie? Can Maddie see them? Who has the special power? How can the ghost also travel through the TV but also possess a tree?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, like, I don't understand a lick of what's happening with the ghosts here.
Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of the ghost stuff in the original doesn't strictly make sense how it's connected or how it's doing one thing or another. The original is literally just a bunch of different spooky things happening at the same house, but in the original there was a connective tissue with everything else, with the family and like you were just on board enough with the characters that you weren't sitting around wondering what are the logistics of the ghosts, because you're more wondering how is this affecting the characters that I'm invested in? How is it making them feel?
It's part of why I'm ambivalent on the first film too. I'm find the individual things in a vacuum to be interesting. The chair scene is interesting. The right before the chair experiment, when she's clearly what the Sixth Sense borrowed from, as she's talking to Carol Ann, and she's walking through the kitchen in one uninterrupted take, and you see the kitchen chairs, around the table. She walks off, the camera follows her off frame, and we walk back, and they're all stacked. Like,
on top.
That
of
was
the
a
table.
cool effect. That
Cool
was
as hell.
scary.
Yeah.
That is actually, what they claim poltergeist activity is. But yeah, everything else in the first film also feels pretty disconnected and crazy. Like, if you can possess a tree, why would you possess a clown doll? If you can suck a person through a portal, why fuck around with being inside of a clown?
Well, I don't know. Some not gonna take that bait. I am curious about the clowns, because it's like there's this whole thing on the first night where Griffin opens, a little closet in his room, and he pulls on a string, and a whole bunch of different clown dolls fall down from like some crawl space, and his dad runs in when he's screaming and sees them, and it's like, oh, the old owner must have left them. So a few different questions. First, it's like, okay, the real estate agent is showing them the house. Oh, the former owner was really into electronics, so the whole house is wired, and there's speakers in the walls. Okay, who was the old owner? What's going on with him? Did the poltergeists haunt this guy out? Why did he leave a bunch of clowns behind? What's the deal with that? Why are there old clown dolls? And then he is scared by these clown dolls that he finds in there, but then another night, then when his parents are off at the dinner party, Griffin is sleeping in his room, and the clown dolls, which are still in the room, he's just left there even though he's scared, then the clown dolls animate and start running around and attack him. But it's like, why did you just leave the creepy random clown dolls in your room, dog? Why didn't you throw them out? They're not yours. You don't like them. Why didn't you have your dad take them away?
That many clowns, especially like tucked away in a crawl space, like, that's the house of a serial killer.
That's John Wayne Gacy lived in Illinois, is all I'm saying. Maybe he had a vacation property. Dude was making bank for a while.
All right, there's a specific formula when it comes to clowns and horror films. I'm gonna butcher it, but let me
Professor of Clownology over here. Yes.
Clowns are scary.
Yes.
Because they are evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Evil clowns are not scary because they're evil.
All right. So I'm going to be honest, I don't understand what you just said.
Okay. The original Poltergeist clown, scary.
Yeah.
Because it's a clown. This Poltergeist clown, not scary because it's an evil clown.
I get it. The original Poltergeist clown is convincingly looking like a child's toy clown, but a child's toy clown is scary. This is a clown that is made up to...
Because clowns are scary.
This is a clown that is made up to look scary and evil, and that makes it not scary. Am I getting it?
Exactly.
Am I graduating from clown college?
Because it's not a clown, it's an evil clown.
Yes. Okay, yeah. It does...
Like, I can have a stack of Killer Clowns from Outer Space figurines in my bedroom at night. No problem. Enjoy them. It's fine and fun, and we all have a good laugh at it.
Yeah.
If I had a stack of Ronald McDonald figurines on my bedside, I would not feel comfortable in my room at night because he's a clown and clowns are scary.
Because a clown that is not overtly, visibly evil, you have to assume this clown is trying to put one over on me and lure me into a false sense of security. It's like when the clown wears its evilness on his clown sleeve, it's like, okay, I know what I'm getting into. I can handle this.
Yeah, right. You listen to My Chemical Romance, probably.
Yeah.
Like, here's one thing I enjoyed about the design of this clown is that its pull string is its nose. That was a little disconcerting.
It's pretty cool. If I was an evil clown, I would have one of those.
But its face paint is like, it's made to look Gacy-like with pointed features rather than kind of, the tragic clown kind of look. And its voice box isn't just, ha 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 ha, the typical clown voice. Hold on, I can do better than that.
It's gonna be great.
I always go to the Happy Gilmore.
Get ready, everybody.
Clown
doing clown impressions
at the putt course. Give me a second. Here we go.
Get your hopes up. Holy shit, dude! That's actually a remarkably effective and creepy clown impression. I was not thinking. Given how badly we bungle literally every impression we try to do ever on air, that was really good.
Thank you.
Damning you with faint praise, I suppose, but I thought that was good.
Well, the voice box for this clown that has evil-looking features is an evil-sounding voice box.
Yes.
So who the fuck is owning this doll?
Yeah. And
to begin with.
And you say to us, maybe, you're being pedantic, it's a haunted house, but there are some spooktacular things that happen where then the person blinks and everything's back to normal and their face isn't all fucked up and the drill isn't coming at their eye. But then there's other stuff like the clowns where there are physical remnants of the thing, so it's like, okay, so clearly the house inhabited this clown doll, but did it also record new audio for the clown's voice box?
Right.
I'm so
that's once the doll is possessed, then it takes on the evil features. Is that what you're positing?
I mean, I guess much like Barnyard, this movie has just created more questions than it answers. Okay.
So this is the other thing about this is like, okay, going back to the electricity question, they're not like flickering lights and stuff throughout the house. They're mostly like fucking up. Okay, here's a gripe. I just have to go into gripe territory real quick. When you get horror coming out of like...
Oh, wait, you live at the outskirts of the horror community, but you have like a vacation home in gripe territory? Is that where you go on the weekends to fish? Okay, sorry. Continue.
No, see, but that's... I don't know. I mean, this is where I feel like an outsider because I feel like horror fans are defensive often, not always, but very defensive and quick to justify and quick to talk about these things. Probably not to this film, but generally they do. Whereas like I'm more like, this doesn't work. We shouldn't be defending it.
Sure.
And what bothers me about a lot of, and why it's hard to do horror in the modern day is like, how many films do you see where you have to go way out of your way to explain why they don't have access to their phones? Because the way that they show a phone getting possessed in this film is just not a way that that technology works. Like, when shit starts to go wrong, their screens start to like have a tracking effect, like it's an old CRT VHS, going awry.
Yeah,
like that doesn't, like, the phone would shut off.
for a movie that
or you would get like an incoming call from numbers jumbling around, but your screen wouldn't go like it's next to a magnet.
For a movie that is so much about technology, it has a very like confusing understanding of technology and how it functions.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen a flat screen TV do static the way the static in this movie works. I've never seen a phone glitch out in the way that it does, and the daughter just seems to think it's like, oh, what's wrong with my phone? What's going on here?
Well, if the whole house is wired for technology because of this audio file or the techno file, like, why are they only choosing the devices? Like, it's almost like the ghosts are ghosts of teenagers who need to upgrade their device every... Like, these ghosts won't possess anything less than an iPhone 15 Pro model.
Yeah, exactly. They just... All these ghosts want to do is just, check out the latest TikTok dance challenges and maybe, upload some videos of their own. Like it's not,
this house is possessed by the ghost of the dancers of the Thriller video.
Yeah, exactly. The only light that these ghosts are going towards is the ring light set up right above their webcam. Ghosts don't want to work anymore. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of like. I mean, I guess the other thing then is that when Maddie has been sucked into the ghost world, and when her brother finally goes in to get her back out, completing this kind of newly added arc for this movie about, oh, her brother was too scared to save her when she was getting sucked into the portal, so now he's standing up for it by going into the ghost world and the rope, whatever. It's very anticlimactic. It's not good. But the ghost world is basically just like kind of a spooky-looking replica of their house where everything in it is made out of writhing dead bodies, which sounds a lot more metal than it actually is.
We got to talk about that, too. So, okay. Conceptually, this is an interesting idea. This kind of Boschian hellscape that exists as kind of a layer to our existing reality.
Yeah.
I not in this film, it's not done well here, but I like that idea. I can see walking into the production offices and looking at the concept art and going, well, that's interesting. I think I'd like to see that. Oh, wait, this is in a Poltergeist movie?
The thing is, and look, the thing is that the TV show Stranger Things has taken this concept and has been just bludgeoning it to death for the past 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay.
The whole concept.
Okay, see, that's where I have to check my reference at the window, because I'm not I watched the first season of Stranger Things and thought, okay, you know what? I'm kind of done with 80s nostalgia, so let's keep it moving. And
that was, look, like, that first season I think is great, and I think it goes downhill after, and I think that, but I mean, that movie is, or that show is so clearly heavily influenced by Poltergeist, but yes, B, this whole idea, it takes the idea from the original one that is revisited here of, oh, there's a reality like ours that's gross and evil directly on top of ours, and portals can exist between them. But so, maybe part of why I reacted so negatively to this is, even though Stranger Things came after this movie, it's just, okay, I have seen them really just flogging this notion of there is a spooky world that looks kind of like a gross, broken down, rotted version of ours that sometimes children get lost in.
But I mean, okay, the first time you came across that on Stranger Things, I mean, just taking the seed of the concept in and of itself.
Yeah, that concept in and of itself, yes, is cool. I think that the way it's executed here, though, They don't really spend enough time on it to really establish it as, like, what's she doing? Is she on the run in this world? Is she hiding from the
is she walking on writhing human bodies?
If the wall that she's hiding behind is made of the bodies, and she's also running from the bodies, then can't the wall bodies see her and tell
those hands that are trying to, like, move through the amniotic fluid of the ectoplasm, like, can't they just reach out and grab her? Like,
it's like original Poltergeist, we never see where the girl is, we just hear her and she comes back, and what is unseen is frightening. Here they give us some glimpses of it and a brief scene in there, and that immediately robs us of kind of the mystery or the terror of what is unseen, and it just raises all these other questions, and so it makes the whole thing feel like, I don't know, was it that bad of a time for her? I mean, I don't want to be in a house made of writhing bodies either, but it's...
Well, let's... I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to mention what happens in the second and third film. Because it's given... That's brought out a little bit more, and clearly they had that to, reference and look back on when making this movie.
Yeah.
So the second film is kind of the force, the present, the beast, as it's referred to in the first film, is more personified into this particular character, and he becomes the face of. There's this whole backstory of the bodies that were under the house were these people who died through this cult, and the cult leader is the one that's trying to possess Carol Ann, and it's a whole fucking thing. And by the third film, a film I love, and I'm not going to tip my hand for my verdict here, but I think more people should see it. There's this whole idea of the mirror world.
Yeah.
You can actually see these entities in mirrors, in reflections, and you get that idea of like, oh, there is our world kind of mirrored in a eviler dimension, and there are these points where people can come through and affect our world or take us through to their world, and it doesn't seem pleasant. That said, we don't ever really go into that world. We see reflections of it, but we don't ever go into it. And I could see the executive going, well, this time we're going to go into it. What if we give you the budget and you go into the world?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the main thing that the original movie was missing was we just didn't get enough answers. Like, we didn't go all the way. We didn't shine a light on every single nook and cranny of the story, and now we can do that, and it'll make it better, obviously.
Okay. I think that's all I want to cover with the ghosts so far. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
All right. Well, before we get into the paranormal investigators, let me talk real quick about Rosemarie DeWitt, who she is, and where this falls in her career.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of an indie darling. I adore her. I think she brings, if you're casting, the type of textured actor to bring, or an actor that can bring a textured performance like Jo Beth Williams did in the original, you can't get better than Rosemarie DeWitt. She's just radiant on screen, regardless of what she's in.
I like her a lot in this. I think probably her performance is my favorite in this movie.
Yeah, agreed. There are some pretty tropey things that they put her through, but she does, wonders with it. So I don't mean to be derogatory toward her career, but she is the quintessential indie film protagonist's best friend.
Yes.
She got her start in the early 2000s with a couple TV shows like Law and Order, Sex and the City, Rescue Me. She was in Cinderella Man. She was in Purple Violets, written, produced, and directed by one Edward Burns.
Oh, okay. So she, she's kind of, she's into artsier stuff. She really likes to kind of think about things and kind of go a little deeper.
Define think.
Oh, you got me.
She finally made a huge splash, I think, in 2008's Rachel Getting Married, directed by Jonathan Demme, where she played the titular Rachel. She was one of the best friends, maybe the sister of Toni Collette on United States of Terror, the Showtime show.
Yeah.
Great show. She was on all of the episodes of that, I think, most, if not all, at least most. 2011, she stars in Your Sister's Sister with Emily Blunt. It's her first collaboration with Lynn Shelton, indie darling director who died way too young. She had such great movies and such an interesting perspective. She also directed Touchy Feely in 2013, starring Rosemarie DeWitt. She was in 2011's Margaret, starring Jim Sheridan. There's a 54 connection in like a widely different directorial movie than what you actually got. Indie movie called Nobody Walks in 2011, written by Lena Dunham.
Yeah.
Then she starts to get some bigger movies, starting 2012 with The Watch, movie. The machine is 100% going to throw at us. I know for a fact.
Yeah.
The Odd Life of Timothy Green.
If you can make a pencil out of leaves.
She was in some Oscar bait movies like The Promised Land, directed by Gus Van Sant, starring Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Another Oscar baity movie was Men, Women, and Children, directed by Jason Reitman in 2014. And then another indie film, Digging for Fire, in 2015. So, again, this falls in a career where it's hard to blame someone for like going, this on paper seems like it could be a surefire hit.
Of course.
Why would you say no to it?
Yeah. You've got an acclaimed writer on board who has penned some other big hits. It's a remake of a movie that was critically acclaimed and very popular.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit of David Lindsay-Abaire's. Did I say that right?
I think so. I don't fucking know.
Okay.
I tend to pronounce stuff wrong on the podcast. Our listeners know this, so don't ask me.
Well, you mentioned a little bit of his thing. As far as his Hollywood career goes, like, he might be a forgotten all-star.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He wrote Robots, the animated Robots movie with DreamWorks and
now that's
Robin Williams.
With Robin Williams and Greg Kinnear, baby. I remember seeing that in theaters. It has. Listen, I'll give this guy. I want to give this writer a lot of credit because there's also a line in Robots that has always stuck with me that I thought was hilarious. Where at one point Robin Williams' character says to Greg Kinnear, "If I appear to be getting smaller, it's because I'm walking away." Which is really good.
Brendan Fraser had a huge run in the early 2000s, and then who remembers Inkheart?
I do not.
You do not. He wrote Rabbit Hole. You talked about. He won the Pulitzer for that.
Yeah,
Nobel?
he won the Pulitzer for that. Yeah.
Pulitzer for that. The film version is very good, but not one I feel like anybody remembers.
No,
even though it was the debut of Miles Teller.
Yeah, and same guy wrote. David Lindsay-Abaire wrote that as well.
He wrote the script.
Yeah, he wrote the script.
I think that's, goes to our mission statement here, which is forgotten doesn't necessarily mean bad.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing Rabbit Hole in the theater. Actually, I might have seen a Q&A with him because I saw that as a screening series out in L.A. where you'd watch the film and they have a filmmaker or someone from the film talking about it. I think that was a screenwriter one, so I probably saw a Q&A with him.
Yeah. That wouldn't be a surprise because it seems like this guy just works a lot. I want to also shout out he won 2 Tonys in 2023 for writing a musical adaptation of his play Kimberly Akimbo. He also wrote Shrek the Musical in 2008.
Yeah,
and
no Tonys for that one.
no Tonys for that one, surprisingly. He also wrote Rise of the Guardians, which is that different from Guardians of Ga'Hoole? Oh yeah,
it is. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
But also forgotten.
A movie I seem to have forgotten. And he also wrote Oz the Great and Powerful, arguably one of Sam Raimi's worst films. But
that was in 2013. Sam Raimi's production company is doing this film. You could see how these sorts of connections start to get made.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, I want to make another forgotten film with you.
Listen, there is something to be said for doing a job where good or bad, nobody remembers it. We just get kind of a clean slate afterwards. It's
true.
I always think about the Tibetan monks who do those elaborate sand paintings that take forever, and then as soon as they're done, they just wipe them away to start fresh. It's like, making forgotten movies is basically that.
Actually, since we're talking about writing, and we're talking about the little touches throughout this film, I want to call out a line in a moment that I thought was both great in terms of performance and was just a really nice line.
Yeah.
When they're early on in the film, they're looking at the house and they're deciding, okay, we don't have any other choice. Rosemarie DeWitt is, with Sam Rockwell at the back window looking out the backyard, and he makes some sort of, snarky joke about it, and she goes, "You have to try to like this."
Yeah.
And like, it felt real between the two of them, in terms of performance. It's a great line.
It's a really good line.
It was one of the few things that started to root me, but ultimately there weren't enough of that in this. But I really like that moment.
There's so many moments up at the top of the movie where he is making good use of the limited real estate he has to try and establish this family.
Yeah.
And lines like that really do it. I think we should make use of the limited remaining podcasting real estate we have, or shall I say remaining real estate of our audience's attention span, to start talking about the paranormal investigators in this movie.
Okay.
Because I mentioned earlier that this remake feels like a remix of the original in which they remixed everything into the worst possible way, and I think that the Paranormal Investigators are sort of emblematic of that. Because, first we have just the simple fact that the family immediately goes to talk to the weird cranks at the university paranormal investigation department rather than calling the cops or any other work to try and figure out where their daughter went. But so they go to them basically the day after the big catastrophe with the tree and the tar and Maddie getting sucked into her closet, and they bring the paranormal investigators back to the house, and they're showing them around with everything that's happening, and they're basically retracing the steps of, I think, one of my favorite scenes in the original, where, in the original movie, they've been getting haunted for some amount of time. Weird shit's been going on. They've been seeing.
There's a jump cut in time when the paranormal investigators come, and it's like been, what, a couple weeks, maybe? Where we don't, as an audience, get to see it, but we get the feeling that they've been experiencing it for a while.
Yes, clearly, at least a week has passed, and it's like, our oldest daughter is mainly staying with friends. Our son only sleeps with us. This room is locked away. They're showing them around. And there's this scene where one of the investigators is bragging about, like, I used a time-lapse camera to get a 7-hour video of a Matchbox car rolling across the floor, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, and they open the door to the bedroom, and, like, shit's flying around and levitating, and lights are flashing, and it's this great moment of the paranormal investigators, who are the pros, are completely blown away and having their minds fucked by this, and the family who's been dealing with this for a week are all just like, yes, that's the room where shit's flying around. Anyway, what was that about a Matchbox car? Very funny, very amazing. They try to recreate that in this movie. They're showing them around. One of the paranormal investigators, I should point out, played by Nicholas Braun, cousin Greg from Succession. Folks, I was hooting and hollering at an appearance from one of my best friends, frankly.
I gotta talk about Boyd.
But so they do this.
His name is Boyd in the film.
Boyd. You know all the young men named Boyd these days. But this same thing where he's bragging about having captured, some very subtle paranormal experience on a time-lapse camera. He tries to sit down on a chair, and the chair gets whipped out from under him and shatters against the wall. And the whole family is just kind of nonchalantly shrugs and goes, yeah, whatever. Anyway, here's the next room. And it's like, okay, but we haven't had this seems to be 12 hours after their daughter disappeared. There is no indication that this has been a long time.
Yep.
It's like, it's just, they have, the family's reactions to this have just turned on a dime simply because we want to try and mimic a scene from the original, even though we've done none of the work to earn it. And so this coming right on the heels of them being like, no, we're not going to call the cops. We're not going to tell anyone about this. It suddenly just makes, like, any ability to get invested in these characters or understand their motivations, it's just lost at this point.
We talked a little bit in Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre about filmmakers, like, shortcutting.
Yeah. Yes.
And I feel like this is another example of that, where it's like, well, we don't need the jump in time. The audience is just primed from 40 years of movie watching to know that they need a laugh right now.
Yes, exactly.
So we don't really need to go out of our way to justify it. That said, that scene in the original is an example of something that's a little overwrought for me, something that I can't connect to. It takes me out of it at times. My ideal version would be this scene from this movie played out by the characters in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want that jump in time in there, exactly everything you just outlined. But, like, she opens the door, and it's like, there's shit floating around in a circle. There's this long... It almost looks like it was shot for 3D.
Yeah.
And, like, this protractor is taking 5 minutes to open up and move toward her face. And, like...
Yeah.
There's a suspension of disbelief or a disconnect between, like, the audience... or me as an audience member reacting to the actor reacting to the stuff happening. Like, I would almost rather just go, oh yeah, okay, great, you had a time lapse thing and it took 10 hours to watch this race car go across the thing, open the door and just have there be like some demon noise and a chair flung at the door and the door slamming shut and just going, oh, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Like, I like the economy of the moment here more than I like the spectacle of the original, but I like the performers and just the vibe of the original more.
Yeah. I will agree that the effect of the chair just unexpectedly flying out from under him and shattering against the wall, that looks really cool. That's a startling moment, and I wish that the rest of everything around it kind of could lift it up the way that it deserves to be.
Agreed.
But so they've got these investigators, they're showing them around, and it's just, that the investigators in the first movie do a bunch of actual study and stuff, and here I just feel like it doesn't go very far. We get a scene with Boyd where he's like trying to do some drilling in the closet that she disappeared into, where like his hand...
I hate this moment.
Yeah, it's like it gets, the drill goes through the wall, and then he's feeling around for it, and then he's getting pinned to the wall, something's pulling on him, and the drill is drilling through from the other side, and it's about to drill into his face, but then the thing lets him go then.
This is part of what I was trying to get to earlier about just saying shit just happens in this film.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's logistically this doesn't make sense, and the fact that the movie, a supernatural movie, is making me think about logistics speaks to the foundational problem here.
Yeah.
He's got a drill. He's going to be drilling mounts for a camera, or for like a thermal camera, right?
He's got a sensor, yeah.
And as he starts to drill in, like his whole hand gets pulled in. He drops the drill through this hole in the wall, and he's putting his hand down there to try to get it, and something grabs his arm and holds him against the wall. And then the drill starts coming through the wall, closer and closer to his face. Okay, you're like veering into torture porn territory with that.
Sure.
Which is like antithetical to the haunted house movie.
Yeah.
B, on a logistical basis, the length of the drill that you would need to go through the wall toward his face, like there's not enough space between the walls for a hand. Like,
spooky
I get that
magic
stupid
drill.
shit you shouldn't
Spooky
be questioning
magic drill.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a real drill when he goes in, so it's not like a fake drill. It's a real drill that he drops, and then it's coming towards his face. Granted, then he's all hallucinating it, so then who gives a shit in the first place? But the other thing is, this is a PG-13 movie. At no point do I think I'm going to watch a drill go into someone's face. So the whole moment is irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, A, I didn't know it was PG-13, and B, I am very deeply emotionally invested in Nicholas Braun, so I was just very worried about my boy no matter what. It's a scene that just kind of ultimately means nothing, doesn't come back to anything, and you can't make your movie just a collection of spooky bits when you're not presenting them as well or as effectively as the first film did.
But I want to talk to something more systemic that you mentioned, which is the first film has the team, and they're a team.
Yes.
They go in, they work together, they're doing science, they're collectively being astonished by what they're seeing. They're talking together, trying to justify, like, well, maybe it could be this, well, maybe it could be this. They're individually having experiences. One guy gets bit by, some spectral entity.
Yeah.
Another guy hallucinates that
his face falling apart.
I should probably save this for the mini, but I just have to get it off my chest. In the first film, one of the investigators goes into the kitchen, and there's this really intense sequence. He goes to the kitchen to have a late night snack. I get that he pulls out a chicken wing, like a cold chicken wing he's just going to munch on. He pulls out a raw steak and sets it on the counter.
My mind was
Not only
blown.
are you not going to grill a steak at 2 a.m. because everyone else is asleep, but who the fuck do you think you are walking into someone's house and eating their, like, prime cuts of meat?
I mean, yeah, like, I so many questions about that. It is the biggest, fattest, thickest T-bone steak. You also shouldn't counter defrost that stuff. But yeah, like, what you're gonna grill an entire steak? Like, he said, I'm gonna get a bite to eat. You're gonna be in the kitchen for what, like half an hour, stinking up the whole house, and then you're gonna just sit down all by yourself and eat this, like, 42-ounce porterhouse steak.
Just get a baked potato while you're at it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm way off my point, which is, outside of that ridiculousness, the first movie has a team, and they work as a team, and even when they bring Tangina in, like, she feels like an extra part of the team.
Yes.
Here, it's just like, I don't understand how these people are together.
Yeah.
Like, unless Jane Addams, the head of the department, is like overseeing Boyd and the other investigator who's given like 2 seconds of screen time.
Yeah, nothing at all.
I can't even remember her name offhand. Unless she's like overseeing their theses and has to work with them, there's no reason they would be working together. They are like, they're not a team. Boyd is like trying to get Griffin at one point to go, it seems like your dad's on hard times. Have you ever thought about, having a poltergeist could be kind of lucrative, even if it turns out to be a hoax? And Griffin's like, no, I just want my sister back. And then walks away and he goes, you're good, kid. You're good. Just in a cringeworthy scene to me. That doesn't need to be there. Like, no. There's no comeuppance for Boyd. There's no need for him to have a character that needs comeuppance. Why is this shit in there?
Yes, well, and it's the same as when then they call in the big guns, when they're promptly outmatched by this, and Jane Addams calls in Jared Harris's character, the TV ghost hunter Carrigan Burke. Like, they call him in to deal with this, and then it sort of comes up that, she and Carrigan actually used to be married, and their marriage fell apart, and she went into academia, and he became a...
Can two characters who are of opposite sex not have a sexual past?
No.
In a movie?
Physically impossible. But
why is that necessary? It's so stupid.
This whole thing, this is in the third act of the movie. There's like 20 minutes of movie left, and it's like, it comes like, you two used to be married. I didn't realize that. Oh yeah, well, she retreated into academia.
There's no purpose for it.
There's no reason. We don't need this backstory on them. This is taking away from moments that we could get with the family who we've been following for the whole movie. And they give us too much of the paranormal investigators, but for no purpose. Like, it's in the same way that, like, they're
too much in too little time to no end.
Yes, they're adding in points of conflict and tension between characters that does not need to be there, that is cluttering the movie, and they're not giving it space to develop. It's kind of similar to just the simple fact that, like, Sam Rockwell's family is like in this state of financial distress and desperation, but then nothing is ever really done with that. So it's like you just introduced this thing that they talked about a little bit that then disappears, and it's the same with this. Like, they are... Yeah. This is not making the movie better. It's not making the movie scarier. It is just cluttering our road to the finish line.
And yet, it's still a brisk 95 minutes.
I know. I mean, look, it's like it's that joke about the two old women at the restaurant where one of them is saying this food is terrible, and the other one is saying yes in such small portions. It's like I shouldn't be complaining. I don't like the movie. You should have given me more of it.
Yeah. Okay. So, what else to say about these investigators before going into Jane Addams and to Jared Harris? Okay, let's talk a little bit about Carrigan Burke, Jared Harris, the Tangina replacement. Here's what bothers me, is that the character... if the film was a little more tongue-in-cheek, I think I really would have liked this, TV investigator approach to it.
Yes.
And... the film goes out of its way to address some things of the first film, or try to ham-fistedly fit some lines, the iconic lines from the first film, into this.
Made me mad.
Like, it took me 6 days for my eyes to unroll. Particularly his catchphrase. Now, the thing is, his catchphrase, which I'll get to in a second.
Okay.
When he says it on the show, would have been a fun reveal. Like, hey, this is a gimmick. This is something the producers are hoisting on me. I'm a real, like, paranormal investigator, but the artifice of doing a reality show and the line that everyone knows from the original, this house is clean. Yeah. Like, if that was revealed as a, like, in-movie joke of, like, we can't take this shit seriously, but it's, what the producers are asking on a reality show as part of the gimmick, that would be kind of fun. But the movie we're watching has the teenage daughter loving the line and like, oh, look, he's going to say it. This house is clean. He's going to say his catchphrase. And the introduction of it ruins it. It's like, I remember once I was seeing Up in the Air.
Yeah.
The Jason Reitman movie starring George Clooney. And, okay, I guess spoiler alert if you give a shit about this, but there's a guy behind me as George Clooney. There's a point in the movie where he's gone through his, airplane exploits and is coming back to Vera Farmiga. And she, as he's walking up her stoop to knock on the door, the guy in the theater behind me goes, "She's married." And I'm like, okay, it wasn't, it's not that I was not aware of that or it wasn't going to be super obvious, but like I was wrapped up in the movie enough to not like to have the spell working on me. And the guy behind me just kind of ruined what was happening by, saying it out loud before it happened.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the case here. This, the older teenage daughter in this movie was just kind of like that annoying movie theater goer.
The fact that she films him and makes him say this house is clean at the very end.
Yeah.
And that earlier she's been watching him on TV and there's like hashtag this house is clean at the bottom of the screen and he says this house is clean.
That's funny. That to me is funny because I would believe that.
Yes.
But calling it out is what's not funny.
Just hitting it on the head again and again like that is really it's a lot. I agree with you though. I think that in the same way that like bringing in the idea of the whole neighborhood being foreclosed and like having this be about suburbia falling apart, I think it's interesting the idea that the expert they bring in has a professional ghost hunting show because that is a thing in 2015 and now, like, ghost hunting reality shows are huge, and I think there's a lot that could be done with that. Like, no, maybe the person we bring in who claims to be an expert is actually an idiot. Then what if they've got a camera crew with them that is making everything worse? Like, there's so much interesting stuff that could be done with this that the movie does not engage with.
Why are they bringing in the university crew when I'm sure he A, would do this as a episode on his TV show, and B, has a crew with him? Like, why not, like, from you're writing the Poltergeist remake, why not just, like, go, why do I need to do all of this, extra work to set up both tracks of these characters? Why not just make it the one thing?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Why am I so beholden to the exact structure of the original? Like, I have to have 3 university investigators because that's what's in the original movie, and I have to exactly follow that template or it doesn't count.
And then those 3 investigators have to bring in, the expert because it's beyond their expertise.
And they have this whole thing of when he comes in, it's like, he knows that he can't do this for his show, right? Yeah, that's fine. And it's like, well, wait, also, why are you guys so dead set on keeping this a secret? Like, in the original movie, it makes sense that Craig T. Nelson wants to keep a lid on the spooky stuff going on because he's a real estate agent who's trying to sell other houses in this same development. Sam Rockwell, why does he care if people find out about the spooky shit going on? Like, it is just another time where this movie has the opportunity to reach for something interesting but opts not to. It's just that perfect remixing into something that does not catch your imagination.
Yeah. The other kind of problem just inherently in the script, not in the performance necessarily, is the level of expertise each of these people bring.
Yes.
I liked that in the original, and to a very slight degree here, the original investigators are like, yeah, we know a thing or two, we might be able to help you out, let us get in there and see what's what. And they quickly get in there and go, oh, okay, yeah, we are used to time-lapsing a race car going across, a toy race car going across the floor for 10 hours.
Yeah. Not
a chair being flung at the wall. This is above our pay grade. Let's bring in the expert.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring in, not even an expert, but like, we need experimental help.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of explanation for who Tangina is when she's brought into Poltergeist.
Yeah.
It's just someone that they've encountered in their, paranormal experiments at the university. And when she comes in, I don't know, she's got an expertise, but what they're trying to do here with Carrigan Burke is almost like a Max von Sydow sort of thing in The Exorcist where I battle these spirits as if like these spirits are a specific thing. I know it's like where's his D&D monster manual?
Yeah.
Like this is I'm gonna need something to amp up my dexterity modifiers if I'm going against these guys.
Yeah. Always helpful to have.
As opposed to just going, I don't know what we're up against. This is what it could be. Like, it's kind of a mishmash of being an expert, knowing what he's up against, but not having any idea of what's going to be effective or not effective. Like, it's all over the map.
It's not really clear, like, what makes him good at what he does, or even whether he's good at what he does, which is...
Yeah.
Also, yeah, but...
He has scars. He says the exact same thing Jane Addams does.
Yes.
But he has scars to prove it.
Yeah, it seems to me that you're just like an asshole who pisses off the ghosts. Maybe that's not a sign that you're actually good at what you do. It's a bold choice because like trying to make like Zelda Rubinstein in the original Poltergeist, she's this little person who comes in very knowledgeable. She tells the ghosts what's what. She really has this commanding presence, even though she's in a little bit of the movie. So to fill those shoes, you create a character who is the host of a reality TV ghost hunting show. That's bold because people who host reality TV ghost hunting shows are some of the most like laughable, clownish, easily mockable people in the world, and I say this as someone who used to work on a TV ghost hunting show. So it's like it's easier for me to suspend my disbelief for the existence of ghosts in the afterlife than it is for me to suspend my disbelief to assume that there could be a TV ghost hunter who's actually cool and can actually help you in a problem. It's a big swing.
I mean,
it's
the most
really
realistic thing is during the film, or not during his show, the clips that we see of his show, he is wearing a fedora.
Yeah, that's on brand. And that's the thing. Lean into it. Have him be a real fedora guy idiot who is outmatched, outclassed, terrified by this, but then calls on something deeper within himself or some expertise that he has and is able to deliver something. Like just by following in the footsteps of the original movie, but kind of remixing what things look like or who plays what role, it doesn't create something satisfying.
Yeah. That said, though, I really like Jared Harris. I love Jane Addams. I want to talk just real quick about where this falls in their careers. I'm going to start with Jane Addams, who we haven't really gone too deep into on her character here, but there's just not a lot to go into.
She stammers. That's her character.
Yeah. So she's nominated for 2 Emmys for her most recent turn on the HBO show Hacks, which I know you love, Jean Smart.
I am a fan of Hacks. I had to look up and remember who she is, but she is actually quite not Jean Smart. I had to look up who Jane Addams is on Hacks, but she is very good playing Hannah Einbender's mother.
So she starts in the mid to late 80s with some TV, including Tales from the Dark Side. I say that because I'm a horror fan and love Tales from the Dark Side, but
you
also
live in the
horror
community.
Film. Yep. She also starred in Paul Schrader's Light Sleeper with Sam Rockwell.
Oh.
You might, Truman, know her from 11 episodes of Frasier. Truman sits up.
Yes. Frasier has entered the building. I don't remember who she was. Can you tell me the name of her character?
I didn't put that in my notes. I assumed you would know right off the gate.
Sadly, I'm not as big of a fan as I thought. You keep talking while I go and see.
Okay. So she started with Sam Rockwell, as I said, but she also previously starred with Jared Harris in Todd Solondz's Happiness. But she's also doing some pretty mainstream stuff in Father of the Bride Part 2. You've Got Mail. A wonderful movie that is kind of overlooked is Wonder Boys with Michael Douglas. She was in she does 2004 is her Jim Carrey year. She does Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think she plays part of the married couple. David Cross plays the other part,
right?
As the friends they visit. But she's also in a series of unfortunate events, Lemony Snicket's, I should say.
Yeah.
Speaking of Todd Field, you made an in the bedroom joke earlier out of nowhere.
I wouldn't call it a joke so much as just a reference, but sure. I mean, you seem to think it was a joke.
I'm just shocked. She was in Todd Field's Little Children. She had a great role in a really small film called The Whackness with Josh Drake and Ben Kingsley. She was on all episodes of HBO's Hung. And she was also in Digging for Fire, which I'd mentioned earlier when I talked about Rosemarie DeWitt. She has starred with every other actor in this film before.
So that was how they got her, basically. They just, everybody had her number. They all texted her at the same time, and she couldn't say no.
Janie, I got your number.
Yeah.
Oops. Let's not get sued for doing that.
I think you misunderstand how copyright law works. Us warbling very off-key a few lines of a popular song does not get copyright people on us, because actually that makes people less likely to listen, and the idea is that playing the actual song would allow us to profit from it.
Oh, boy. Okay, Jared Harris. He is the son of Richard Harris, infamous... Not infamous. That is a negative.
That sounds like he's like a warlord or something.
No, he's not a warlord. He's just a famous, well-regarded English actor. He was the first Dumbledore.
Yes, Dumbledore
for
Prime.
A certain generation, but many other things to many other generations. But Jared Harris was an actor who I think is going to be most well-known depending on your interests. Because he spans so much time and so many genres. Yeah. He's just kind of a workhorse character actor. So you might know him from Chernobyl. You might know him from Mad Men, both of which he was nominated for an Emmy. You might know him as, I think, Richard III in The Crown. Richard III? That's
no,
right. That's the Hunchback.
He's definitely not Richard III. No, he's the one who is Queen Elizabeth's dad who dies and she becomes yeah.
I've been watching too many Towers of Londons.
I don't know which Richard he is, but it sure as shit ain't the third. I don't even think he's a Richard for that matter.
His film credits go back to 1989 in the early 90s with small parts in big films like Far and Away, Last of the Mohicans, Natural Born Killers. In the 1990s, he's on the indie scene in films like Wayne Wang's Smoke, Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man with Johnny Depp. He played Andy Warhol in Mary Herron's I Shot Andy Warhol. As I mentioned, he was in Happiness, Todd Solondz Happiness with Jane Addams. His body of work is just like so big. Okay, here are just a few notables to get us up to speed here. Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Ocean's 12. He works with Guy Ritchie in Man from U.N.C.L.E. and the first Sherlock Holmes movie is Moriarty. He works with Spielberg in Lincoln as Ulysses S. Grant.
Yeah.
He works with Adam Sandler in Mr. Deeds, Lady in the Water, Igby Goes Down. He's in one of the Residents Evil.
So there's so many to be in. Everybody's been in a Resident Evil at some point.
Leading into Poltergeist, he's on like a mainstream kick with films like Mortal Instruments, Forgotten, Pompeii, Forgotten.
Yes.
The Box Trolls, Forgotten.
Yeah.
And then I just have to mention this for myself. The year before this film, he's in a revitalization of Hammer horror films, a production company that was, really well known 50s, 60s, 70s. Came back in the early 2000s with Let Me In and Woman in Black.
Yeah. But that's right. You're not in the horror community, though. No, you're sort of at the distant outskirts. Rooting for the revival of a beloved 60s English horror production company.
But that film that he was in before this was called The Quiet Ones. So, like, he's not a stranger to this type of horror either.
Yeah.
And then he takes this film.
Yeah. And then this is probably his first film playing a reality TV ghost hunter, and frankly,
I think so.
I'm glad he didn't get typecast, but also kind of wish he did. I wish that this character A had been given the freedom to suck, and that B, then we got a spin-off about like this crappy TV ghost hunter having learned nothing, continuing to try and hunt ghosts and do badly at it. keep getting injured by the ghosts because he pisses them off.
Sounds like a Will Forte vehicle.
Honestly, it does. I'd watch that.
I'd watch that.
I'd watch. Can we get Will Forte in this movie instead of Jared Harris? No disrespect to Jared Harris, but I just want to.
Well, hold on. Now we're starting to veer into like a scary movie territory, and I want to just make sure we're approaching it from a slightly different angle.
At least I feel like at least Scary Movie committed fully to the bit that it was doing, unlike this movie, which does not commit to any of its bits.
All right. What else do we talk about in our remaining moments here?
I think,
anything plot wise?
I don't know. I mean, Jared Harris comes in, he helps him. They throw a rope into the portal, and there's people pulling on the rope from downstairs. Go watch the original Poltergeist. The same stuff happens. They get the daughter. The son goes in holding the rope. He gets Maddie back. They pull him out of the ceiling. They're covered in goop. They wash him off in the bath. They're trying to leave the house in their car.
There's a fake out ending.
Which is also, again, remixed for the minimal amount of tension and suspense and enjoyment. They are in the car, and Maddie's just like, oh, but the ghosts aren't gone. Wait, I thought you helped them go into the light. No, they didn't want to go into the light. No, we have to go. And the ghosts pull the car back into the house. It's so just, they did a fake out at the end of the other movie. We got to do the same thing here, but faster. Just the same thing, but faster. The same thing, but faster and worse.
Oh, God. All right. Well, then let's go into our final two segments here. Why do you think this film was forgotten?
At risk of making this any longer, I would like to read an excerpt from an essay that I hope will shed some light on that. This is an excerpt from the 2021 essay "Everyone is Beautiful and No One is Horny" by R.S. Benedict, and it ran on bloodknife.com.
Okay.
This is a piece of pop culture criticism that is more broadly focusing on how, heroes in action movies, Marvel movies, are all very beautiful and immaculately, their bodies are immaculate, but nobody shows any desire or messiness. And kind of
Tarzans.
Yes, exactly. Not even a butt. Seen today, one of the most striking scenes in 1982's Poltergeist is not the evil clown doll or the monster tree, but a moment of relaxed affection between the parents. The father, a bald, beer-bellied Craig T. Nelson, cracks jokes and prances for his wife, who wears a frumpy nightgown and smokes a joint and yammers weed thoughts and laughs at her husband's silly display. Finally, the husband playfully dives onto the bed. Neither character is glamorous in this scene, but their relationship feels frisky and lived in and charismatic and real. The house looks real, too. There are toys and magazines scattered around the floor. There are cardboard boxes waiting to be unpacked since the recent move. The kitchen counters are cluttered and mealtimes are rambunctious and sloppy, as one expects in a house with 3 children. Compare this to homes in films now. Massive, sterile, cavernous spaces with minimalist furniture. Kitchens are industrial-sized and spotless, and they contain no food. There is no excess. There is no mess. In her blog McMansion Hell, Kate Wagner examines precisely why these widely hated 5,000-square-foot housing bubble behemoths are so awful. Over and over again, she reiterates the point that McMansions are not built to be homes, they're built to be short-term investments. End of quote. So,
wow.
Bringing this back around to housing the way we started this whole thing.
Yeah.
The original Poltergeist was a labor of love. It was built on, obviously it was designed to make money, movies are. It was financed by a studio, but it came together because of a bunch of themes and ideas that were really important to Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper. By comparison, this remake of Poltergeist is basically a McMansion. It's sterile, it's composed, it's lifeless, and it's just sort of a short-term investment that was cooked up by Fox 2000 and MGM because they wanted to try and squeeze some more life out of an IP they already had. So we don't remember this movie because I think at every level, no one was really putting the thought, the consideration, the heart, the love into it that Spielberg and Hooper put into the original. Everybody was kind of like, okay, well, we have to do this, so let's do this. Let's put together the pieces in more or less the order that they were, and maybe people will see it.
God, how do I follow that up?
I should have let you go first.
Yeah, I feel like I'll just take 5 minutes to say the same thing. I take issue a tiny bit with well, not even. Why am I even going to try to? Like, clearly, Spielberg was trying to make money.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was trying to make money doing the thing he loved.
Yes.
And, I think there's a lot of people that contribute to the tangible quality of the original.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of us that we didn't get into the practical versus CGI argument here.
No.
That said, I think I said something on our Tarzan episode, which I still hold true and I think applies here, which is when you can do anything with CGI, the brain doesn't register it as important.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And I want to circle back to what I said at the beginning of this episode, that I watched this movie 4 times for this episode, not including the original trilogy. And I don't think I would be able to do that if there was anything substantive here for me to latch onto.
Sure.
It's a movie that just kind of moves through you like a ghost. Like, you feel a cold spot for a second, and then it's gone, and you're like, what was that?
Yeah.
And then you might feel it again when you walk in the next room. Like, you can watch this film and then not remember this film, and then watch this film again and then not remember this film again.
This movie will just make the lights on your TV flicker, and that will be that.
And that will be that. What more is there to say? That's why this film is forgotten. It's a TV strobe light.
There's no here.
Fuck that moment too. Jesus Christ, I hated that moment.
She sets it up by saying they're coming, and then she says they're here. Ugh.
Good God. Okay, well, so then let's get to our verdict. Should we send this back to modern memory, or should we not?
No, let's not. Let's forget the hell out of this movie. Let's throw this movie into the closet.
I since I've got a big bag here on my side of the machine of send this back to modern memory stamps, I'm gonna use one of these stamps to use on Poltergeist 3.
Okay.
I want to take this opportunity to say, hey, let's send that movie back to modern memory. There's a black cloud hanging over it, I understand, but if you look at it, for its special effects and for the kind of inventiveness of what they were trying to do with the alternate dimension, it's a fun film, and one that I think it kind of has like a canon vibe, if you know what canon films are.
Yeah.
Like, it's just got this weird creativity to it. It's not great, I'll be the first to admit that, but it's got Nancy Allen in it. You can't go wrong with her.
Can't go
it's
wrong
got
there.
Tom Skerritt in it.
No
problem
problems
with
that.
him.
No, sir.
Laura Flynn Boyle in her first role.
Oh.
It's just it's a fun film. Let's forget this remake.
Great, cool. So basically, we take this one out of circulation and we replace it with a different one, like Indiana Jones putting that bag full of sand on the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Except the thing we're taking off is not a golden idol.
No, he's basically taking a bag of sand off the thing and putting a golden idol back on.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's what
Back where you belong.
We're being kind and rewinding Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Great. Okay, so you're recommending Raiders of the Lost Ark then? Great, putting it down.
All right, well, I guess if there's nothing else to cover with this movie, we'll just see everyone next week. For Truman Caps, I've been Landon Solano.
For Landon Solano, I've been Truman Caps. Stay out of your spooky, swirly, portally closets, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Movie Memory Machine is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/gruntworkpodcast to keep the machine running. Theme song by Porky's Groove Machine. Rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. For more information on today's show, visit moviememorymachine.com.